You are live.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Sunday show. I'm Matt. That's Ian. I pointed the right direction this time. It's always wild how that goes potentially backwards. Hey, this is a call-in show sponsored here on the line. There's lots and lots of opportunities for you guys to call in and talk about what you believe and why, and more importantly, why we should believe it as well. The number 720-619-2288, and there's a link below in the description on how you can call in on your mobile device or in a browser on your PC, etc. All of those are viable options. As a reminder, if you're calling in on a mobile device, these things not only are notoriously bad at a number of different things, but you may need to tap the phone to wake it up, then tap the browser to have your browser start waking up to those calls. But for those who don't know, I'm Matt Dillahunty. I've been doing this for, I don't know, decades, but none of that's going to matter because I'm in a year o Zen. And that is, I'm basically, and we don't have to do this every time. I'll drop this with any caller that wants to, or the co-host, whatever. Um, I'm trying to do I pretty much know language and logic and not necessarily anything specific about religion, but I can think. And so I'm going to ask a bunch of questions. And it's really, it seems that in part, after doing this for a long time, I tend to, for better or worse, and maybe for worse more often, start with the question that ends the entire conversation and shuts it all down. And while that's kind of efficient at getting through calls and everything else, I don't know that I don't know that it's meeting the goal of potentially teaching people or getting them to understand where and when they've made a mistake or where I think they've made a mistake. Um, please remember, there's tech issues, there's going to be delays, there's going to be, um, you know, speak in manageable chunks. So like when you're calling in, can you explain what you believe and why, and why it is that this is something that is understandable by anybody and that virtually anybody should agree? Can you explain why we should share those beliefs? Um, in my Euro Zen, I may have to set aside the I don't know anything about religion in order to make the conversation better, but there's not going to be yelling. And while I will always use profanity, it's not going to be you know, you don't have to worry about me biting, I guess, for a lack of a better term. And every now and then we can put up a poll that's like, oh, did Matt lose it or crash out? Whatever. It's kind of for fun, but really, I'm just trying to have better conversations. We're going to interrupt to correct either misinformation or to get clarity on something because people will call in and they'll make a claim and think they've provided the justification for that claim when all they've done is provided a claim or provided another claim to go with the previous claim. And so we're going to need to ask clarifying questions. This isn't a race, and you'll get to say a whole bunch more, almost certainly, if you talk in kind of manageable conversational chunks. Hey, I believe in the God of the Bible. And then we could say, like, by that, I'm assuming you mean like the traditional 66 books. Are you looking more at a Protestant or Catholic version? We might have a question like that. We might mean we might have a follow-up question like, okay, how literally do you take the Bible? How, when you read something like Genesis, you know, is it literal that that's the order and that's the amount of time? Is it day age? Is it, metaphorical? What do these things mean? And getting those sorts of things is not just, it's not a quiz. Oh, let's see how well the caller knows what they actually believe. Although I think that's important. It's just making sure that we're talking about the same thing so that when we ask questions about why we should believe it, we're not talking past each other. And if your justification requires a particularly lengthy story or a lecture, that's probably going to be a bit of a problem. Although, on occasion, we're happy to let people go on. And it's worth remembering that nothing about your personal justification for what you believe and why should require any knowledge or information about what Ian and I currently believe or already believe about anything, including what sort of evidence would change our mind. I mean, that's not a, you didn't come to your belief in whatever it is based on looking at Ian and myself and saying, ooh, what sort of thing should convince them? That's what I'm going to try to find when I, you became convinced for some reason. But we're happy to answer questions for clarity and to show some of you how to actually answer a question directly, which has been a little bit of a problem. Ian, you've been busy. How are you today?
I've been good. I've been good. It's I just came from Unapologetic with Justin and Blitz, which is always a lot of fun. Um, and I'm taking a college course. I want to go to grad school for philosophy. But I didn't do any like philosophy in my undergrad, so I'm going to like a community college with like a philosopher that I like, whose work I really enjoy. I'm just trying to do the coursework. It keeps me busy, that and like a full-time job. Yeah, my days are quite busy indeed.
Yeah, and every time I turn around, so there's more and more people doing this. And I'm going to be doing more of it on my personal channel. By the way, I just released a. You can go to YouTube and look me up. Either Matt Dillahunty, Atheist Debates, Sans Deity. All of those will get you there. Um, you and I had a discussion recently about objective morality because I'm on record for years and have done numerous lectures and videos and even some debates about a about the subjective nature of morality. That not only is it situational, but um, without a solution to the is not problem, it's like, oh, well, you can't have a goal, but once you decide on a goal, even something as simple as well-being, which I'm not going to say is super simple because you have to define it and
Mhm.
everything.
Yeah,
Once you have a goal, you can compare the consequences of your actions with respect to that goal objectively, or at
yeah,
least probably better phrased non-subjectively, because we are going to make mistakes. This is about what, in an idealistic sense. And you and I had a conversation about what I would call, I'm going to do a follow-up because some people were confused, but I think I would probably call it um, an objective moral foundation,
mhm. Yeah,
but there are still objections.
yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I've been reading through some of the comments. There are some videos that I heard that got made about it that I'd also be interested. I haven't watched any yet, but um, there's like a number of objections. I think that they're quite interesting. And I don't know. I mean, like the feedback that you get is going to be like a reflection of like the way that you were able to communicate yourself in many circumstances. So, um, I yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it would be all right to go into some of it and then like give some like overarching responses. I know you want to make a video in response to it, but I definitely have some thoughts in terms of like some of the responses that the video got.
On the one hand, I think that would be fun, although I really need to I've got to, I want to put together some thoughts on my own and kind of put together a structure to get that video out. And also, we're looking for calls right here, right now. So if you are like if you're someone whose views uh, differ from ours, and not that Ian and I don't agree on everything in every way, and but if you have views that disagree with ours, feel free to call in 720-619-2288 or use the link down below, and go through and offer a defense of it. Uh, I think I don't know. I don't want to get too in the weeds on morality. I just want to make sure I pointed people there. Um, are there other things that you've been working on lately?
Yeah. So part of the process for applying to grad school for philosophy is that the single most important thing in like a philosophy grad school application is something called your writing sample, which is you're supposed to write like a work of philosophy that it doesn't need to be published, but it needs to be something that's in like the ballpark of like publishable contemporary academic philosophy. And I'm writing mine on the cosmological argument. I think that the cosmological arguments on the market right now are possibly even like self-defeating. Um, So I've been reading so much about the cosmological argument, how they're supposed to work in general, and how they've been formatted in like specific ways, whether it's like the argument from contingency that tries to argue from the fact that things could have been otherwise, and everything that could have been otherwise, there needs to be some explanation for why it is rather than isn't. And then you can trace that regress back, and eventually you need to arrive at like a necessary thing, a thing that couldn't have been otherwise. Or like the Kalam cosmological argument that everything that begins to exist has a cause, but there can't be like an infinite regress of causes. So there needs to be a first cause, and that first cause must be God, the uncaused cause. I think that both of these arguments run into an objection, basically for the exact same reason. And I'm working to develop the thought further that a critique of I don't want to get too in the weeds, but like a critique of the contingency argument is something called the modal collapse critique, where, okay, let's say we have this necessary thing, and then this necessary thing necessitates our world through like an act of creation. Well, then it just seems like our world is necessary. So the argument kind of undermined itself because it turns out there actually is no contingency. The explanation's necessary. The connection between the explanation and the thing that it explains is necessary. So the thing that explains must also just be necessary. It's called the modal collapse. And there's a similar
Yeah.
critique of the Kalam. I'll stop yapping in just a sec. There's a similar critique of the Kalam, which is that, okay, either God's act of creation itself began to exist or it's eternal. If God just eternally created, then there isn't a first cause. Creation's eternal. It didn't come into existence. Um, but, if God's act of creation began to exist, then that's not the first cause. There would need to be something that caused his act of creation to come into existence in the first place. So in both instances, the argument fails for a very similar structural reason, if that makes any sense.
It kind of, I mean, you lost me a little bit in the sense that it seems like you're implying that if in fact God exists uncaused, God
Mhm.
cannot act.
So what the Kalam is trying to do, it's trying to trace back causes to a first cause. The Kalam is that everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. And most theists will just say like the cause of it just is the first cause for sake of simplicity.
Sure.
Um, so the criteria for something having a cause is whether or not it begins to exist. So you can then ask God's act of creation. God exercises his creative powers. He creation comes about because God is like willing creation and he's exercising his powers, and then that necessitates creation. Creation springs out of that. So you can ask the question, did it begin to exist? Of God's act of
The act?
creation? Yes. So
Yes.
either God's act of creation, his exercising of his causal powers, either that began to exist, in which case it would need a cause by the Kalam's own principle of explanation, that
But
everything
its
that
cause
begins
is
to
God.
exist, yeah, what caused his act to begin? And that
God.
thing, but his existence, or like it becomes this question of like, okay, God exists eternally. If God is the cause, if God's existence is the cause of him acting to create, if that necessitates his act of creation, well, God exists eternally. God's existence necessitates his act of creation. Therefore, his act of creation must just be eternal. And if his act of creation is eternal, and his act of creation necessitates the universe, then the universe is eternal. And suddenly, now nothing begins to exist. Everything's eternal.
I don't see that and I don't think it follows, but maybe
We'll have to
we'll
hash
get
it out sometime.
some theists in who want to dig in further. But we do already have callers starting to call in, so that's nice. Here we go. Uh, Papo pronounce he, him is a theist from Puerto Rico who will prove God exists. How you doing, Papo?
How are you, man? And Ian, is that your name, Ian?
Yeah, it's Ian, but yeah.
How are you?
Doing well, doing
We're doing
well.
all right. What God are you going to prove to exist?
What God? The Christian God.
Okay. I would say, would you agree with me that there's a lot of different perspectives? Like if you asked 100 Christians, you might get, let's not say 100, even though it's likely. Let's say you get 50 different God definitions from them, right? So I really need to know which Christian God what are the properties of your God?
That he's got all the omni properties from goodness to knowledge to presence, all of them.
Okay.
Okay.
What makes you think that this God began, or I'm sorry, what makes you think that this God exists?
Okay, this is my argument. The universe is contingent or dependent, therefore, a necessary or required non-dependent independent being must exist,
Hmm. Why would
and
I
that
grant that
being
the
is
universe
God.
is dependent?
What?
Why would I grant that the universe is dependent?
Because there is evidence for it. It's dependent. There are dependent beings.
How could there possibly be evidence that the universe in its entirety is dependent?
Okay, how many beings, dependent beings, must exist for a non-dependent, independent, necessary being to be required?
Why would it follow from the fact that things inside of the universe are dependent, that the entirety of the universe itself must also be dependent? Why would that follow?
So, can you answer my question first?
No, because you're saying how many X's make this required, and Ian's saying why would we think any amount of X's would make this required?
Yeah, it's like if instead of giving an argument or like responding to your argument, I just got up and did like a little dance. And then I asked you the question, like, how many little dances would I need to do in order for that to be like a good response to the argument? It's like, I don't think there's any number of little dances you could do that would be like a response to the argument or a response to the question, you know? I'm not sure
So
that there's
no.
any number of beings that would be dependent inside of the universe that could then establish that the universe itself is dependent.
Okay, so I'm gonna steal man your argument. Are you saying
No,
that no amount
go
of
ahead.
dependent beings can prove an independent being or necessary being?
I'm saying that no amount of dependent beings inside of the universe could establish that the universe itself in its entirety is dependent. The
How do you show
universe,
that?
But I, but I'm not
So,
saying that.
oh,
okay,
that's not what you said earlier? I could have sworn it
you,
was.
Felix, you asked
No,
how many dependent beings are required before what?
before for an independent being or necessary being to be required in existence.
Right. So here's the question. Why would any quantity of contingent beings be required to prove an independent non-contingent being?
Okay, because a dependent being structurally and logically means that it's required an independent, non-dependent being to exist
No,
for
it
the
doesn't.
dependency.
No, it doesn't. The fact that an individual thing is contingent does not tell you what it's contingent upon.
Yeah. So there's probably two
It
things
does
to
tell
say
you.
about this in specific, which is there's a great critique from David Hume where, he argues that in terms of dependency, maybe this moment in time is just dependent on the previous moment in time, and that moment dependent on the previous moment. And then in that sense, every single moment becomes explained because it's explained by the moment that immediately precedes it. The fact that this moment exists might depend on the fact that this last moment exists, but based on the fact that the last moment exists, that's sufficient for this moment to exist as well. So that's kind of the first thing, which is that it seems like you actually could just explain this with the infinite temporal regress. But then there also seems to be this other problem, which is maybe I agree that there is an independent thing, but maybe I think that the universe is the independent thing. Maybe I think that like the space-time fields and like the quantum fields are the independent thing. Or maybe I think like the wave function is the independent thing, and then it gives rise to the rest of the universe. Why
Hey,
would I think
Felix,
that the universe isn't?
Felix, can you back away from the microphone? You're breathing into it constantly, and it's like everybody is commenting on it.
Okay, I
Thanks.
just did that. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So why would I think that the universe is dependent instead of the universe itself being independent?
Okay, it does tell you what kind of being it is because dependency structurally and logically means it depends on an independent, non-dependent being because the categories are exhaustive. It's either
Totally
dependent
unresponsive to what I
or
just said.
independent.
Yeah.
Not even an attempt to answer the question. And it's so funny that you use that one because I literally give a response to this one. It's the one that comes from David Hume, where you can maybe have the infinite regress of dependent beings. You could have this moment depending on the previous moment, depending on the previous moment, like for infinity. So it doesn't seem like there's any problem with that. Um, what you're trying to establish is that the universe is like a dependent thing. I don't grant that the universe is a dependent thing. I don't see why the quantum fields and the space-time itself couldn't be independent.
Okay, but I prove it's dependent. I proved it.
Oh, what was the proof?
The proof is that you are dependent.
Why does it follow from me being dependent? Maybe the thing that I'm dependent on is space-time and the quantum fields. Why would that then, the fact that I'm dependent, mean that the fields that underlie my existence aren't independent?
Because I'm talking about you. I'm not talking about the fields.
Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
that I'm dependent. What I'm wondering is why would I think the universe is dependent?
Because I just need one dependent being to prove a necessary being. That's all I need. I don't need the
I can
universe.
agree.
No, no, no. Felix, listen to me. Would you agree that this cell phone is a contingent object?
Correct. I agree.
Okay. And we happen to know that it was contingent on the people who designed it, right?
In a sense, yes.
What do you mean, in a sense?
In a sense, it has that kind of dependency also, correct?
So you could just say yes. All right. Are the people who designed this also contingent?
Correct.
Okay. That means that something can be contingent on something else that is also contingent, right?
In that sense, correct. But not,
Well, I don't
not all
know.
the way.
Felix. I don't know what you mean by in that sense. In what sense is that incorrect?
No, it's correct in the sense that it has that kind of dependency with other
No.
people.
I'm sorry.
But it's
In what
incorrect-
sense was my statement incorrect?
Incorrect in the sense that ultimately dependency is not dependent on another dependent being. It cannot be. It's not possible.
Wait, what? Of course you
So-
could have dependent beings dependent on, you could have chains of dependency. And I just gave you a great example of
this is
that.
literally causality, a chain of dependence. The fact that X is contingent on Y doesn't tell you whether or not Y is contingent or not.
Yeah. If you want like a trivial example of this, your family lineage, I depend on my parents depend on their parents depend on their parents. I'm a dependent being that depends on a dependent being. Of course you can have a dependent being depend on another dependent being, obviously.
But I'm talking about ontological dependency, ultimate
So
ontological
are we.
dependency,
I'm
So
not
are we.
ontologically
local
dependent on my
I'm sorry.
parents.
I'm sorry that somebody taught you the word ontological without teaching you what it means. But um, the that something is dependent does not in any way tell you whether the thing or things it is dependent upon are also dependent. You would need to demonstrate. Can you demonstrate anything that is identifiably non-contingent?
Okay, dependency by definition requires an independent category because the category is exhaustive, dependent and independent. Those are the only two
I'm
options.
sorry, I didn't ask you about categories. I understand that dependent and, or sorry, contingent and non-contingent are exhaustive. However, it's possible for two things to be contingent on two different things and to be contingent on each other. What I asked you, and I'll put it above my head just to make it clear, can you give an example of something that has been confirmed to be non-contingent?
Correct, because a
No, no,
dependent being
no, I'm sorry,
exists.
Felix. I'm sorry, Felix. You can't say correct. I'm asking you a question. Can you give an example of something confirmed to be non-contingent?
Yes, a necessary
What is it?
being.
I have no examples of a necessary being. What is that? And how do we know it's real?
We know it's real because dependent beings exist. That's how we know.
No, I'm
So
sorry.
it
That's
follows.
not how this works. I asked you to give an example of something confirmed to be non-contingent.
Yeah. What would we
Okay,
grant as
okay,
being non-contingent?
okay. By definition, if a dependent being exists, actually
I'm
exists,
sorry, Felix. I'm
it
going to interrupt
follows.
you again, and I'm going to interrupt you every single time without losing my shit. Because when I ask you to give an example, to say by definition is not giving an example. I need you to give an example of something confirmed to be non-contingent. Can you do that, yes or no?
Yes, I can.
Then do it, please.
A dependent being exists. Therefore,
Uh,
a
no, no, no.
necessary being exists.
I'm sorry, Felix. If I say give an example of a unicorn, and you just say a unicorn exists, that's not giving an example of a unicorn, is it? Is it?
Well,
Is it?
I will have to describe. I
Is
will
it?
have to describe a
Is it?
unicorn.
It's a yes or no
I'm sorry,
question.
this was a yes or no question, Felix. Are you able to answer a yes or no question?
I'm not sure what you're asking me with the unicorn right now.
I don't care if you understand why I'm asking you. I know you don't understand why I ask you. Now, we're rapidly approaching beating up on the adult at this point. Are you able to answer a yes or no question?
No, I'm saying that I'm not
No,
sure
I
if I
clear. That's
understand
correct. You're
what
not
you're
able to
asking me.
answer a yes or no question. So I don't think there's any reason for anybody to keep talking to you because we're desperately trying to get you to make a case for something, and you seem
No,
to
man,
think
man.
I, I'm sorry. I don't know why you're talking. Do I need to mute you? Do I need
There
to
was
mute
another
you?
yes or no question. I don't know if you picked up on that, Felix.
I was going to
No, you
wait
don't have to mute
until
me.
he, yeah, it's clear. Felix will not answer a yes or no question. So here's the thing, Felix, if you're not going to answer yes or no questions, if you're not going to provide examples to justify your position, if you're just going to make assertions and then claim that you defended it, you are no longer engaged in rational conversation. And I don't know that there's any point in having a conversation with you.
Okay, man. Can you still mind my position?
No, I have to ask you questions to get you to explain your position. It seems to be that you have a logical fallacy either of composition, where you think because there are dependent things, there must be a non-dependent agent. And our question is, um, even whether or not everything is dependent is still unknown. And if there's something that's non-dependent, that doesn't mean it's an agent. And so we try to get you to acknowledge that if a cell phone is a contingent or dependent thing, that it may also be contingent and or dependent on other contingent and dependent things. And you said that that was right in a sense, but you wouldn't list a sense in which it was wrong. So you seem to be engaged in perhaps some of the most confused or dishonest defenses of things, where every single time we ask the question that will expose your irrationality, you just deflect to answering some other question or asking a question in response. So no, it's not possible for me to steel man. I can't steel man Fergalbergal Manergalbergal. If you'd like to actually answer questions, we're still willing to do that. But we do have other callers on hold, and now it's approaching the point where it would be rude to keep those callers on hold in order to have a completely incoherent conversation with you.
Mhm. How could I steel man your
Okay, man,
position
I'm
when you
willing
can't
to.
even steel man your own position?
I'm willing to answer questions.
Cool. Can you give an example of something confirmed to be non-contingent? That's a yes or no.
Yes, sir.
Give me an example of something confirmed to be non-contingent.
The non-contingent thing that exists is what the contingent thing proves.
What did you
This
say?
guy's the goat. Yeah, you just said it's the thing that the
The
contingent things prove.
non-contingent thing that exists, the
It's his
example of the
conclusion, right?
non-contingent thing that
The
exists is what the contingent things prove that exists.
yeah, the
Okay.
non-contingent thing is the
Yeah.
non-contingent thing that whose existence we don't grant.
Yeah,
Very informative.
Felix is not serious. Felix is a troll, a prank caller, who saw that he was about to get shut down. I'm going to go ahead and mute you because I'm expecting you to go off here in a second. Felix saw that he was about to get shut down and wouldn't get to keep wasting everybody's time and money on this prank call bullshit, um, and decided to pretend like he was going to answer the question. And instead, either Felix is too addled to know what an example is, or I Ian basically called Felix the goat, because what he did was provided a tautology. My example of a contingent thing is that thing which things are contingent upon. Or sorry, my example of a non-contingent thing is that thing that is non-contingent, that contingent things are contingent upon. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, hey, can you give me an example of something that can fly merely by sneezing? Yes. The thing that can fly merely by sneezing is that thing which doesn't require anything other than a sneeze to fly. I mean,
Yeah.
Felix, I get that you seem to be bored with a lot of time on your hands. You've called seemingly every atheist, every show. You've called me multiple times. You have tried to talk about contingent things, and you think that you can ramble on about how, if in fact there's a contingent thing, then there must be a non-contingent agent. I'm going to try one last thing before I move on to another caller. So listen very carefully. I know that you heard a beep there. Is it possible for one contingent thing to be contingent on another contingent thing, yes or no?
No, in the sense that a necessary being
No, I
is
didn't ask you
dependent
for
on.
an instance. I asked you yes or no. Okay. Felix, are you
In one
able to
sense,
answer a yes or no question?
no, it cannot be.
No. No, it cannot be. You're not even, I dropped Felix, by the way. Felix isn't even capable of listening to a question to make sure that when he gives a no, he's answering the updated question and not the question from 20 seconds ago or so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe
There's a part of
it's
me that thinks that Felix might be an absolutely brilliant troll. Um, but the world is so filled with confusion and irrationality and absurdity that Poe's law comes into play. And I can't tell if I was just talking to someone who is just completely divorced from reality or someone pretending to be completely divorced from reality.
yeah. I don't know. My intuition is that he's being genuine, and that's very sad.
Yeah. It's, I try, I almost broke down on the last show because we went round and round. Wow, I'm getting emotional just remembering it. We went round and round with somebody who I believe was genuine, and it was so absolutely their mind had been so absolutely crippled by the philosophical religious filbro circles that they had been talked into um, that we couldn't get anywhere. And it's like, these are people who drive and vote, and it's wild. All right, let's not keep hammering Felix. Um, Here we go. Liam is a theist
Hey,
calling in from Delaware. Pronouns are EM, who has an objection to Ian's argument against divine simplicity. So Liam
Mhm.
and Ian, fight.
Yeah, we should probably lay out a couple of things. So, for the audience's sake, divine simplicity is a doctrine that says that God lacks parts. He doesn't have physical parts, obviously, but he also doesn't have like metaphysical parts. That there are certain distinctions that you might want to draw in, like me, for example. I have. There's like this part of me where I have knowledge, like I have the capacity to have knowledge, and there's like this part of me that's the capacity to move my arm up and down. And you probably want to say that these are like distinct things, but in with divine simplicity, everything that you could say of God is just identical to him, that you end up saying that God is identical to love, and that God is identical to his essence, and that God is identical to his existence, and that God is identical to his act of creation, and that all these things are just kind of identical to each other. Um, so I probably want clarification. The standard critique that I usually run of divine simplicity is the modal collapse argument, that it seems to just lead to saying that God doesn't have free will, that all of his actions are necessary. But is there like something else that you had in mind?
I've heard you say it a couple times. It's an objection where you speak of uh, if I'm miscategorizing or characterizing you, please just let me know. A simple divine being itself cannot change, but it must change if it goes from being the creator or not being the creator to being the creator. The act of creation somehow changes God, which is a contradiction, right, in his unchanging nature. Is that like I've heard you say it a couple times like that? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so I guess my rebuttal to that is the change occurs in the effect, not the cause.
Mhm.
This is what's called a Cambridge change. Has anyone ever said that? It's kind of philo jargon. Cambridge change.
Yeah, I'm familiar with
Um,
Cambridge changes. You're saying that it's like a
yeah, like
change in like external things, like a change in like the relations. Like for example,
yeah,
if you and I were talking about my friend Greg, who's in the other room, that would be there would be like a
yes,
relational feature that Greg has gained, but it's not really like Greg has changed. It's kind of
yeah.
like
It was
things
just we're
external to
talking
him have
about him, and you could
changed.
like, yeah, yeah,
So
you
I
get
think
that. Okay, like a tree falls in the forest, and now you're taller than it. Like, did you get taller than a tree? No. Like,
hmm.
that's
So
the way God is creating. He's like wholly distinct. Like if he's immaterial and we're material, he's wholly distinct.
yeah, okay.
God's act creation is a single timeless
Uh,
expression of his eternal essence, It appears like a new event only from our temporal perspective, which is, I think, why I think this has problems. It's like
So
it's how you're thinking about it, but not from God's perspective. It appears new because we are
no,
material and
no,
time
I get
bound,
it. I
but to
get
God,
it.
who's eternal and holy immaterial, making him distinct from his temporal creation.
Yeah. Here's I think the critical question.
Mhm.
Let's go to the state where God exists alone. God exists and creation doesn't exist. In this state, is there something in God that's necessitating the existence of creation?
Say again.
In the state where God exists and creation does not exist, is there something
Mhm.
internal to God that necessitates that creation exists?
I would think so. I would think it's
Then,
in him, right? Like ideas exist
mhm.
in him.
Yeah, then that would just be a contradiction. That God exists in a state where he is necessitating creation and creation doesn't exist. If something is
I still think
necessitated,
you're
then
missing that,
that
like,
thing is the
if God is
case.
in eternity, like he's not changing. Like there is no
Yeah,
change there. We are what's
yeah.
changing. I think
Well,
you're
ooh,
kind of like
sorry.
putting us like in his shoes, kind of like mixing both realities there.
So here's the problem, which is that you think that we depend on something internal to God, that if you trace the causal chain backwards from the universe coming into existence, that eventually in the causal chain, we get to something internal to God. Maybe you want to say this is his active creation. Maybe you want to say that this is God willing creation, whatever. You know, either that thing is present that just necessitates that creation exists, or it isn't. You know, if we have God exists, God is necessitating creation exists, creation doesn't exist, we have a contradiction that creation would both exist because, modus ponens, God exists. If God exists, then creation exists. Creation doesn't exist.
I'm not following where this is like answering the objection. Like I just think that you're putting
Your
like
view is a
temporal
contradiction.
qualities to God. I just don't think you're granting what eternity unchanging, how that's different.
I'm
I'm not trying to
explaining to
like
you
beg
how
the
it's a
question. I'm not.
contradiction. You
I
would
think we
agree,
just
right?
see it
These are
differently.
incompatible premises. You know, if God exists, then creation exists. You want to say that there's some state where God exists and also that creation doesn't exist.
Okay, there's some state like that. That's like a hypothetical.
Don't you think that there's a state where God exists alone? A state before in quotes creation,
Yeah, but
where
he's not
it's
time bound. So
I
like I
didn't
think
say he
you're
was
kind
time
of
bound.
fusing that. The
I
creation
didn't
is
say
what's time
that. That's
bound.
not what I
Like if we go
said.
from that perspective, it's not going to work out the same way.
I didn't say that it was time bound. When did I say that?
Because you're acting like if creation doesn't exist and then comes online, that all of a sudden that he's changing.
Wait, sorry. When did I say that God is time bound?
I'm assuming that's what I'm drawing as you're saying it's a
No,
contradiction.
I didn't say that, right? I understand that the God of divine simplicity is not time bound, that they're saying that it's like a strictly atemporal God. We can take out all the
Hmm.
time words. In God's timeless eternity without creation, is there
Is
something
he?
internal to God that is necessitating the existence of the universe?
I would say he's wholly distinct from it.
Is it a yes or a no?
He's wholly distinct, meaning that
Is
like
that a yes?
he is
That just
not
doesn't answer the question.
a part of a temporal reality.
You're just not answering the question. I don't know if you're aware of that. I didn't say that he's a part of the temporal reality. I literally just clarified this to you. I'm a bit confused how you made that mistake again.
I don't know what you're trying to put me in a box.
I just want like a yes
Well,
or no answer to the yes or no question. If there's a presupposition that you reject, you're welcome to tell me that I've baked a
Mm.
presupposition into it that's not what you believe, and that's fine, right? I think you should be engaging with the position. So I'm not going to presuppose something in my question that you would not agree
Yeah,
with. But the
it's
question
really
is
strange
this.
to watch people consistently um, look and try to find the motivation behind the question, or you're trying to put me in a box, or you're trying to trap me, or this. What's wrong with just answering the question as it was asked?
Yeah, here's the question. In
Okay.
God's timeless eternity without creation, this is the state where God exists alone, God exists, and creation does not exist. In God's timeless eternity, sans creation, is there something internal to God that is necessitating the existence of creation?
Hmm. I don't think so.
Yeah. When God exists with creation, or sorry, in God's timeless
That would
eternity
result in a modal
with
collapse, right?
creation,
Sorry.
no, not even. This would just result in a change. There's nothing internal to God. In God's timeless eternity, sans creation, there's nothing internal to God that necessitates creation. But in God's timeless eternity, post creation, is there something internal to God that necessitated creation?
I would say there's no potentiality, no composition. Like, no.
That's not really what I asked. I'm just asking, was there something internal to God that necessitated the existence of things external to God?
I don't think there's anything in God's timeless eternity that necessitates creation.
Then in what sense is God the creator? If if God is not responsible for the existence of creation because nothing internal to God explains creation, then God's just not the creator.
I don't think that follows. I think it
It
follows that
absolutely
we
follows.
can know
If you're
God because
listing
he's
it, no,
pure
it
act.
absolutely follows. It absolutely follows because if you
No.
list, hey,
No,
I'm
you
so,
try to
you
get
can
me. It
keep
was a
saying
good try, buddy.
you can keep saying no and trying to
You
talk over
have
me. It's
fun.
never, ever,
I'll pray
ever
for
going to
you
work.
guys.
And all it's doing is showing that, oh, now you ran away.
Oh, I accept his surrender. I feel like the critique's super straightforward.
Yeah. I was trying to point out, and I had follow-up questions that maybe I'll get you to address.
Yeah,
Um, it shows how absolutely terrified they are. I'm not going to answer the straightforward question. And then for those who aren't clear, if we were to list the characteristics of being sorry, agent A,
mhm.
one of them is that it necessarily coexists with creation. And we'll duck out of all the atemporal stuff or
Yeah,
anything else, but just coexists with creation.
yeah,
Then that being agent A is different from agent B that does not necessarily coexist with creation.
yeah,
And so if you say, if what you're describing in your God is closer to or includes uh, agent B's non necessary tie to creation instead of agent A's necessary tie to creation, then there cannot be a creation, or that being cannot be the creator of that creation.
yeah,
Because if there's a being that is the creator, and it's in fact necessary that it must be the creator, then that is agent A. That is the description of agent A that we were doing.
yeah, yeah. Um, I think that's all like basically correct, right? You have okay, there's a couple of key moving elements to the argument. The simple God can't change. There's like a philosophical reason for that. I'll give like a brief overview for those who are interested. The reason why a God that doesn't have any parts, any distinctions inside of him can't change is because in order to change, there needs to be the part of you that stays the same, like your maybe essential features. And then there needs to be like the part of you that changes. And if you have a simple God, then you don't have two parts. You only have this one simple substance. You have this one thing where his act is identical to his will, is identical to his existence, is identical to his essence. So this thing can't change because any change would be a change in its essence. And if you lose an essential characteristic, you stop existing, right? Okay, so the simple God can't change. But when God exists alone without creation, before this is I'm not using this in like a temporal sense, but like when God exists before creation, God is not exercising his powers to create. But then and the reason why that's true is because if God was exercising his powers to create, then creation would exist. Otherwise, he's not all powerful. If God exercises his powers to do something, that thing happens. There's no way around that. So if God exists alone, he's not exercising his powers of creation. And then in order for creation to come into existence, he would need to begin exercising them. So he goes from not exercising his creative powers to exercising his creative powers. But that's a change. That is a change in the simple being. The simple being goes from not creating, and then he begins to create, thus leading to creation. So that's a problem for simplicity, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things to dig in on. Maybe not everybody's God necessarily needs to be simple and in divine
Mhm.
simplicity. But when he was given the example of what's the name of the trait that's not intrinsic?
Extrinsic, like external.
Extrinsic. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
oh,
okay.
Cambridge changes.
Cambridge changes there. And so he gave this example of, a tree falls over and now you're taller than it. No, I'm not. No, that's a 100% an equivocation fallacy because you're changing what was intended by like when I say I'm not the tree is taller than me, I'm saying this linear measurement of a tree compared to this linear measurement of me, the tree is longer. The
Mhm.
orientation doesn't matter. So the notion that a tree fell over doesn't matter. But even if you chop that tree up into a million pieces, such that no linear measurement of any individual part of the tree, now you've changed. You're no longer talking about the tree. So I don't understand how that is in any way a Cambridge change, because the orientation isn't relevant. By the
Mhm.
way, taller isn't a property of me or the tree. Taller is a comparative between two things. Just like I have mass, one of the properties of this bag of crap sitting here talking to you is mass. One of the properties of this bag of crap talking to you is not weight. Weight isn't a property of me, although it is generally applied to me, like Matt weighs, 195 pounds. But that's not true. That Matt weighs 195 pounds on that scale, in this place, in this way, because weight is an assessment of a system of which I am part and not, it's comparative because that's impacted by gravity and distance and the mass of some other object and that. But mass is just a fact. I mean, that's just a property of me.
Yeah. So, okay, here's another thing. It's it's strange to say this isn't like some knockdown objection, but it's a very strange place for the atheist and the theist to agree upon. If you're saying that God's property of being the creator is a Cambridge property, which is to say that it's like not real, like it exists only in human heads. Like it's a property that God has in our head, but not in reality. It's so strange that the atheist and the theist in this instance would be agreeing that God God being the creator is like purely like mental, like he's not actually the creator. It's so strange that the atheist and the theist would agree with that, would agree on that. I don't know. It's not like a knockdown objection, but it is like it feels like the atheist and the theist shouldn't agree that God isn't actually the creator.
That is pretty weird. We've
He's
got
back.
a call here we can try and do here. Gilbert is calling from Texas. Pronouns are he, him, with a question that I'm baffled by. So, Gilbert, welcome to the show. You're on with Ian and Matt.
Yes, sir. Like I said, I'm calling from San Antonio. I only started deconstructing when I was 59. I'm 65. I have been reading like the Analects by Master Confucius and the Tao by Master Lao Tzu, and I touched a little on the Ethics by.
Hey, Gilbert, can you back up just a little from your microphone? You're kind of overdriving it and it's cracking a bit.
I'm sorry. I'm just right now, like the gentleman before you he was talking about God, and I read in the Analects the first chapter. I was raised in a Texas school system, and
I'm asking you if you can move away from your microphone a little bit.
I'm sorry.
Hello? Well, I don't think I need you to move that far away.
We can't hear you. Come back. I'd love to talk to you about, I don't know, the Tao and Confucius. I don't know. I'm probably more knowledgeable about Confucius, but I'm at least familiar with the idea of both Confucius and Lao Tzu.
I'm not sure what's going on, Gilbert, but we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now pretty good?
Yes.
Yeah, it's fine.
My question is, how do I keep religion and this God thing out of when I'm reading the Analects, the Lao Tzu's, and the Ethics? How do I keep that crap out of how do I keep it from being religious? How do I keep God out of it?
That's a bit
How do you keep from
confusing.
drinking alcohol when you go out on the town?
I guess like the question, it's kind of confusing.
If you went out on the town, would you be able to keep from drinking alcohol?
At this point in my life, yes, sir, I would.
Cool.
Yeah, that's kind of a perplexing question. My understanding is that if we were to put Confucius into like a Western box, that his ethics is like it has like some distinct features to it, of course, but his ethics is very similar to like Aristotle's virtue ethics. So there is no there's like a couple of like key features to Confucius's ethical system, and they just have nothing to do with God. So, he thinks that we're all striving towards Ren, which is basically like humanity. Like, I don't know, it's in the same way that Aristotle thinks that we're all trying to live like the good life. Confucius thinks that we're all striving towards like something similar, like self-actualization, like the ideal human, basically. And that in order to do this, that you just need to embody like various virtues, like xiao, filial piety, and then I know that there are like some others, but I don't know. That's kind of a perplexing question because it seems like, there just isn't any God in there in the first place. So just don't put God in there.
Yeah, because I realize that when we're born, we're all atheists, and that shit is all shoved up our ass and crammed down our throats. And that I saw the video with Carl Sagan when he was asked a question about God, and he said, what do you mean by God? And Einstein says he agrees with golly, I can't remember his name. Barack.
Can I make a
Yes.
Stop worrying about what Sagan said, what Einstein said, what Spinoza said, what anybody said. Nothing anybody said is relevant to what the truth is. Instead, work on, hey, when I hear something, how do I tell whether or not it's likely to be true? What justification do I have? What sort of evidential standards am I going to require? When is the time for me to stop saying, man, I don't understand that? Like, for example, the last caller, Liam, somebody's going to say this is a dick move on my part, but I don't really care. He called back, but then he ran away again. It was very clear what was going on, and it would have been so much better for Liam, for the show, for respect and everything else, for him just to say, hey, I don't know that I necessarily understand what you just said. I don't know that it's clear to me. I need to go off and maybe I'll rewind and listen to this again offline. Then I need to do some thinking about it. Um, because when you call in to challenge Ian's view on something, and the thing you object to is a just a simple, obvious definition. Is X a property of this agent? Yes. Then Y cannot be because there's a contradiction, or that can't be a result from it. You know,
Does
that's
that go along with like Pascal's wager? I mean, because I
Not
heard that
really.
it didn't.
no,
Uh,
no. I would recommend, Gilbert, that you reach out to like Recovering from Religion and look into um, some books designed to for people who are kind of new to some of this stuff. Like I got promised this book, Gospel of Lies here. My friend
mhm.
John Cohen is just about to release a book. I wrote a blurb for that last night, and it's just keep asking questions, but see if you can find some people to participate with, some sort of secular community in your area, because it seems to me, and I know you mentioned this at the beginning, it seems to me like you're at the beginning of this, and that's great. Congratulations, welcome. The water's fine. But that's not really what we do on this show. Uh,
Oh,
we're
boy,
really
I'm
looking for
sorry.
people to defend their views, but we like it when people like you call in because it shows everybody that there's constantly people at all ages finding their way out of religion, and finding their way into skepticism and reasoning, and that organizations like Recovering from Religion are essential,
Hmm.
and that shows like this do help people, even when it's not the primary goal.
Mhm. I do want
Oh well,
to
I
absolutely
think
commend you though for reading, Lao Tzu and Confucius. Those are both great authors. I wish you the best of luck on your truth finding journey.
can I say something?
Sure.
I don't I kind of cutting down all my beliefs. I don't believe in luck. I don't believe there's a thing called normal. I don't believe in fate, and I don't believe in faith. I mean, I don't know. I've since I started. I guess I went cold turkey because, like you said, I don't have anybody to learn me. I mean, I go back to the ancient texts. I've also read Bertrand Russell's "Why I'm Not a Christian," and I read Christopher Hitchens' "God Poison." I mean, religion poisoned everything. But like you said, I still got all these questions because this shit was shoved up my ass for so long that I'm at the point. I believe I know I'm going in the right direction. I guess I'm not saying that God drove me here, the universe took me here, or this got me here. I'm just curious of why. Am I the only one? That's basically it.
No, you're not the only one at all. There's an entire recoveringfromreligion.org exists. There are entire communities. There are new people deconstructing all the time. We actually, we've got a show called the Devangelicals on Saturdays, that is geared a little bit more, I think, towards people kind of deconstructing. Um, it's just,
Ask you a question when you start your
when
deep.
you're asking,
Um,
how do I avoid religion or the God stuff while I'm doing this? To me, it's like saying, when I'm walking through the grocery store, how do I not pick up sweets as a diabetic? Um, I'm predisposed to want to, and the answer is you just do. And it's not always easy. You just realize you're going to make mistakes in thinking. You're going to fall for things that you shouldn't have because you don't know enough yet. But as long as you keep searching and make sure that, all of every view that you have, you should be certain, and you should think you are certain about absolutely nothing. You should have confidence that is proportional to the evidential support and the warrant for it, and confidence that is proportional to how much you understand it. Like, I have no confidence in quantum mechanics because my understanding of quantum mechanics is let's say not vanishingly small, but pretty damn close. Not enough for me to say, "Ooh, yeah, this is it." And string theory. Ooh, I'm not even convinced that's testable. And as it turns out, so are some physicists that I have interacted with as well. But the time to believe something is after you have sufficient evidence for it and sufficiently understand it that you can describe it to somebody else.
Can I ask you one last question before I hang up? Well,
sure.
The end. Were y'all pissed off when y'all started deconstructing about everything that was shoved down your brain? Because I found that, I was just walking for a long time, pissed off at religion and this God. Did y'all have the
It's really
same
common.
feelings?
That's common. That wasn't my experience.
It's not my experience either. I probably have like a vastly different deconstruction journey than most because my community was I didn't come from like a super religious community. I came from like a community of like pretty half-hearted Christians, like the people who show up to church on like Christmas and Easter. So I don't think my parents cared much. So they gave me like the freedom to, I was raised Christian for like the first 13 years of my life. But I certainly had the freedom to stop believing. It's not like I had any like repercussions that came about from that. So my journey is probably very different from most. I also deconverted when I was like 13, so.
I grew up in a Catholic family. There were 7 siblings, 6 siblings besides myself, having to go to CCV and catechism. My Catholic communion name is Julia. When somebody, because, Julia, what the fuck?
Well, traditional Latin style names and all that, but ain't nothing wrong with how names. You should get over the baggage about I get it. You sound like, and I apologize. It sounds like you have a Hispanic background.
I think I need to hear that. I guess I still am carrying the baggage.
Like, you speak Spanish?
No.
No?
I speak Spanglish.
Spanglish? Okay. That's fair. Yeah, the notion that there are words that have like this intrinsic masculine, feminine, it's a bizarre tradition sense that comes from a number of different languages, particularly languages that are tied to Latin.
I was 11 years old, and everybody got the masculine names to the boys, the feminine names to the girls, and I'm 11 years old, and I'm so excited, and then come out to find out my communion name is Julia.
Well, the cool thing is it doesn't matter, and there's nothing wrong with it. But I got to move on. We got to get to some other callers.
Okay.
Gilbert, thanks a lot for calling.
I appreciate
Please reach out to Recovering from Religion and keep questioning stuff.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right. Dun, dun, dun. Here we go. John is a theist calling from Missouri. Pronouns are he, him, wants to address the topic show, says we should be a Christian because it's true, and wants to talk about the Apostle Paul. Hey, John, you're on with Ian and Matt. How are you?
Hey, thank you guys for letting me in. And I just want to tell you that over the past 6-8 months, I've watched a lot of atheist content, right, from Justin, Brandon over at Mindshift, because I was wanting to challenge my faith. Okay?
Sure.
And I've learned a lot about the Old and New Testament that I thought I knew. But I want to talk about Paul in relationship to faith. If that's
Paul in relationship to faith.
So
by the way,
is there... Yeah, go for it.
John, this is none of my business, and you don't have to answer it. I don't have to out you, but I'm also from Missouri.
Okay.
So I was wondering, roughly, you don't have to tell me the town or anything, but like what part of Missouri?
Springfield.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Okay. And would you agree or that Paul's letters to the churches were probably the first, I guess, Christian writing that was done even before the Gospels?
I'm not up on the like the historicity of it. I have no idea. Could be.
I, I have
I know that they're earlier than the Gospels.
I think they are among the earliest. Like um, I think First Thessalonians is among the earliest. Um,
Okay.
and certainly that's one of the undisputed Pauline letters, and I think it's generally viewed as one of the earliest. So yeah,
Okay. And it seems to be that Paul is very familiar with Greek rhetoric debate. He knows Hebrew language, Aramaic, and he was trained under, I think you pronounce it Camellia, a scholar.
I don't know how
Or
to
at least
pronounce it, but yeah.
He claims he was taught under him. So I think he would qualify as somebody that was versatile in both worlds, Hebrew and the Greek world, and also being a Roman citizen, that gave him a lot of advantages to be able to talk to people. You dispute any of this thing that the Bible claims?
I don't know enough to dispute any of it, but also I don't know how it's relevant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like
I'm going to get to
if
that.
what we're trying to get to, if what we're trying to get to
Yep.
is the story true?
Right. And that's what I'm going to get to, with your permission.
Okay. How does what Paul knows or doesn't know about first century culture and language in that area, how does any of that relevant to whether or not what he says is true?
Okay.
Like, would you agree? Would you agree
Yeah.
that I am a proficient English speaker in 2026 and fairly knowledgeable about the things in the United States, and science and general knowledge about the world right now?
Yes, I would.
Does that mean that if I write something, it's more likely to be true?
It depends on it actually depends on you, your motivation. Why are you writing something?
Actually,
I mean,
I could have the best motivations in the world and still be wrong, right?
yes, you could. Absolutely.
Okay. That's the hurdle you're going to have to overcome down this path. But keep going.
Okay. The path I'm going to go on is, if he is the Pharisee of Pharisees, as he claims that he was, he's deeply steeped in the Jewish faith, why make up a story about getting this vision from Christ?
What makes you think he made up a story?
Hey, why make up that story? The supernatural
what makes you think
story?
he's making up a story?
He would. Well, what I'm saying,
There are other
is,
explanations, right? He could have had a hallucination. There's lots of things that could have happened.
It could.
So my mom believes she saw the demon of alcoholism sitting on my grandfather's shoulder. I genuinely believe that my mom is convinced that she had that experience and is describing it the best she can. I don't think she's a liar, but I also do not for one instant believe that she actually saw the demon of alcoholism.
Yeah. If you want a good example of this that comes from like a different culture, there's a Hindu priest named Shanti Kali who claims to have a run-in with like Hindu gods, or like visions of Hindu gods. And he was such a firm believer in Hinduism and in his experiences that he founded like he founded, I don't know what the correct terminology for this is, but he founded like a group of Hindu worshipers, and they got cornered at gunpoint by Christians. Like these Christians demanded that he recant his testimony and that he say, he was lying, and then that he converts to Christianity. And he said, no, kill me. I know what I saw. I know Hinduism is true. I'm not going to give this up. and then they kill him, right? He was willing to die point. And by the way, this happened in like the 2000s as opposed to like the I don't know, like the 36 BCs or sorry, ADs. So it's, I don't think that Shanti Kali, I don't think that he's like lying. I think that he probably did see something. I just don't think that he saw like the Hindu gods, right? He might have had like a spiritual hallucination or something.
I have a quick, man, this is
Yeah,
probably unfair. Is the Damascus Road experience recorded in any book other than Acts?
I don't think so. I'm trying to think if he covered that in any of the other letters. He did talk about persecuting Christians in other letters, I do believe.
Yeah, I mean, he talks about. I know the Bible, but I don't know as well as Justin or Dalton or any of those guys. But
right,
he talks about his past in Galatians and Corinthians, but I don't think the specifics of the Damascus Road experience exist outside of the book of Acts.
No, it does. I don't think it does either.
If that's the case,
right,
and that's what you're referring to, why make up that story?
Right.
Then that's not a story that Paul made up. That's a story that the author of Luke Acts made up, and Luke Acts is a con.
Yes, but Paul in the other letters does talk about his, not the conversion story, but he did talk about how he did think one way and now he thinks a different way, right? He accepted,
somebody changed their mind, but
okay.
That's not the same.
Yep.
Because, so you said, why make up a story? Well, first of all, those aren't the only options, either that he invented it up intentionally, knowingly, or it actually happened. That's a false dichotomy. He could be honestly relaying his understanding of what happened. And then it also gets altered because we don't, like, for example, he didn't write Acts, and that's where the Damascus Road experience is at least most prevalently recorded. The author of Luke Acts, we generally view, scholars view as someone who knew Paul, but we have no idea who wrote Luke Acts. We have no idea who they were writing to, whether it was a person or a title. And it starts off, both the Gospel of Luke and Acts of the Apostles start off with this intentional con job in order to pretend that there's evidence instead of actually providing the evidence. I just did a video on this. It's not public yet, but it will be later this month. And so if the author of Luke Acts, who we don't know, is the only source for Damascus Road experience, then you wouldn't be asking, why would Paul make up that story? You would ask, why would Luke make up that story? And Luke might make up that story because he heard bits and pieces of that story and decided to embellish it or got it wrong. But I think we have no way of investigating because we don't have originals. We don't know who the author is, and none of those people are alive today to find out what the story is. How does this get us to truth?
But I think Paul does talk about that he used to be a Pharisee of Pharisees, that he did persecute Christians in some of the other Gospels.
So what?
Or not Gospels, I'm sorry, letters.
So what?
If I'm not mistaken. Okay. You've got a guy with Paul, a Roman citizen, with authorization from, let's say, the Sanhedrin to go out and persecute Christians. Now, that's coming from Acts, I understand. And all of a sudden, that all changes. He has everything to lose by doing this. He does. Being a Roman citizen in those days, why would you do that?
Maybe he figured out it was wrong.
Sacrifice.
Maybe he had a sincere conversion. None of that tells us whether or not the religion is true.
Mm-hmm. Also, like the hallucination hypothesis just explains all of this, right? Like if you hallucinate into thinking that you're going to get like tortured forever, unless you become a
Right.
Christian. Well, obviously you'll become a Christian. Like that's trivial.
Right. Well, I know that a lot of people claim to have visitations from God, the Holy Spirit. I've never had any of that as a Christian. I've been a Christian since I was born, basically. I've never had any of that. And I kind of doubt a lot of this nonsense about, oh, God told me a message to pass on to you. I really don't buy any of that at all. My belief is, I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's growing up.
Here's the thought.
You know that it gets into you, and you do look for signs, or you look for evidence that would support that point of view. You do.
Yeah, that's the bias.
And that's why I started
is that you're
watching
trying to
atheist
find
content.
evidence to fit what you already believe instead of following the evidence. So, for example,
Right.
Paul is involved in the stoning of Stephen, right?
Yeah, as Saul, correct.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Saul is involved in the stoning of Stephen. That's also in Acts.
That's correct.
If in fact there was a guy who was a Pharisee of Pharisees who was running around persecuting Christians,
Right.
what if stoning Saul flipped something in his brain to where now he thinks, holy crap, I just murdered a guy for not sharing my beliefs? What if that was the epiphany that fundamentally changed him?
Like guilt, right?
Sure.
Like, hey, right. It could be. It could be. I'm not. That's the reason I'm still holding on to this, was because of Paul, and that he had the early letters, and he's obviously convinced that Christianity is the way to go instead of the law, because the law cannot save you, according to him. That's what he's saying. That's what I still hold on to.
Yeah, but
him.
so what?
I mean, the Gospels are problematic.
Why would
we
the
know
fact that Paul believes mean that I should?
Okay, could you say that again?
Why would the fact that Paul believes mean that I should?
It doesn't mean you should.
Okay.
It doesn't.
If a Damascus Road experience is good enough for Saul, why isn't it good enough for all of us? Why is God playing favorites?
Therein lies the problems that I've encountered over the last 8 months. I thought I knew the Bible really well before I started watching atheist content, like I said 8 months ago.
Yeah.
And I've learned more about the Bible than I've ever learned in church.
Yeah. And so did I, by the way. That's how I got here. And I don't know enough.
Right. But all I can say is I'm just kind of holding on to the faith. But it's hard. It is hard to let it go after you've been one for 69 years. It is hard to let it go, but I know there's problems, a lot of problems.
I get that, John, but I don't think belief is a choice. I think
no, it's not.
You're either convinced that there's a God or you're not. And it may be, please don't take this the wrong way. My friend John's writing a book on doxastic volunteerism, the notion that you can choose your belief, and we're in agreement that you can't. It may be that you actually believe in the God of the Bible, or it may be that you believe in belief, a la what Dan Dennett was talking about, and that what you're having difficulty letting go of is essentially the praxis part. You're having difficulty letting go of this notion of, oh, I've lived 69 years of my life with this idea that there is a God and he loves me, and maybe I'll get the answer someday, or somebody's looking out for me when nobody else is, or somebody has a concept that makes sense of the world when things seem unfair. There's something out there, even if I don't understand it. And what you may be terrified of, maybe not, is the notion that if in fact you ever say, I don't believe in God, all of a sudden all of that crumbles and now you're left flailing in reality. And I can tell you that while it does feel like that to some people initially, most people get past that relatively quickly. It's like if you've lived your entire life with the expectation that on your 70th birthday, you're going to inherit $900 million. And on your 69th birthday, you find out, oh, I'm actually not going to inherit $900 million. You're going to
Right.
be upset and confused, and you will have made a ton of mistakes. I mean, if I'm on my 69th birthday and I think I'm getting $900 million on my 70th, I'm going to start spending some of that money ahead of time. Mostly, not too much, but I'm gonna make some mistakes. And so what's happening for a lot of people deconstructing, and not that you necessarily are, but for a lot of people questioning and challenging their views, is they're trying on, how am I going to live? How am I going to answer questions? How am I going to feel if in fact I recognize what I secretly already recognize? Because if you don't say it out loud, if you don't say it publicly, then it's the only people who know whether or not you believe in God are you and God.
Right.
That's true all the
That's
time.
true.
And if there's no God, then you're the only one who knows. And so I also did another video, which is coming out in a couple of weeks, about how we are all liars, and Christians as well, because nobody acts the way you would expect them to act if they actually thought a God was watching all the time. Nobody.
Right. You wouldn't touch yourself in bed late at night.
Oh, I would, because I know he likes that. But, I'm sorry. That was a bad joke.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if I've probably settled or solved anything in my head because, like I said, when I started this journey 8 months ago and watched a ton of videos, Mind Shift, I think his name's Brandon. He went through every book
Brandon's
of the Bible and started going through this. And I said, you know what? I didn't even know that was in there. So then I got over to the New Testament. And I said, okay, well, maybe Paul is something I can hang my hat on here, that at least there's somebody that truly believed that Christ, came as the Messiah, and he was convinced of it, and he had everything to lose by believing that. I mean, he had everything to lose because, he had a place in society. Being a Roman citizen in that world gave you some big-time advantages. Well, it didn't work out for him, apparently.
But
So,
from his perspective,
I don't
it
know.
probably did, right? Like, let's say that he had the hallucination and he believes that genuinely, truly, Jesus is God and that he's going to get, well, a couple of things. First, that the end is near, that it's going to be like within his lifetime, that the end is going to
Right.
come back, and that, there's going to be a separation of the people who are going to heaven and the people who are going to hell. And he surely doesn't want to go to hell. I mean, if he knew sorry, not if he knew, but if he believed with 100% certainty that, hell was a real place and that this is the only way
Right.
to avoid getting tortured forever, then of course he's going to give up all of these things. Like, of course, like, I don't know, if I truly believed that I was going to get tortured forever unless I died from exhaustion from like walking, then I would probably die from exhaustion walking, right? Like, I think that
Gotcha.
from Paul's perspective, if he had a hallucination and is just mistaken, but he's very confident in his hallucination, that, this is the only way to avoid infinite suffering, obviously he's going to do it.
But I'm sure you guys have had like dreams that are really vivid, right? Before, and that were disturbing, maybe. I would think a person in Paul's position, if he was as well educated in like Greek law, rhetoric, logic, and also the Hebrew world, that it would take something very powerful to get him to change that. It couldn't just be a bad dream.
It wasn't a dream.
Is what
It
I'm
was
trying
like
to
a
get across.
hallucination. And
No,
I've
I know
never
there's a difference.
mistaken a dream for reality. I don't think that it's like a dream. I think that it could have been a hallucination if it happened.
But it
Like
also could be,
schizophrenics have.
yes, but it also could be a confluence of a number of different things. For example, the world, the internet has shown us a lot. There are
Right.
more irrational, confused, and deeply delusional people walking around the world, interacting and functioning at high levels in society than I would have ever imagined. I know because I get
Right.
emails from them.
I
People
agree.
who are
I
convinced
do
they
agree with
see
you on that.
things. Yeah, people who are convinced they see things or that they've been given the true message and everything else, and they're not stupid. And so,
Right.
well, okay, some of them are, but not everybody who believes weird things is stupid. And so
Right.
all it takes, I could easily imagine someone being in a position where, for example, they're running around persecuting Muslims left and right. And at some point,
Right.
they're actually involved in what they would have once considered the justified killing of someone of that religion. And because of things they've heard, because of things they've seen, because of dreams they've had, because of things that have happened in their life, because of people that they knew, because of it's been wearing on them, when this person gets killed, it fundamentally changes how they view because they were actively involved. It's one thing to sit here comfortably in the United States and buy your guns and ammo magazines and your Soldier of Fortune magazines and pretend like, oh,
Sure.
I would serve in the military and I would do this. But for those of us who've actually spent time in the military, I have never killed a person, never, but I have friends who have,
Uh,
and it fundamentally
Now,
changed them. Not every one of them.
were you in the military?
Yeah, I
I'm
did
just
8.5
curious.
years in the Navy.
Okay, I was 6 years in the Army, and it was total peacetime. I never killed anybody either. This was
I
80
was
to
I was in
86.
during Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Provide Comfort, and a bunch of others. It was not total peacetime, and so some of my friends ended
Okay.
up killing people, and I was fired at when we were in Haiti. So thanks for your service.
Okay.
But the thing is,
No, thank you for yours too.
I think my service was incredibly easy, and I didn't kill anybody. But I know people who did, and some of
Right.
them are okay. Like genuinely, some
Yep.
of them are okay. Some people can do it, some people can, right? And some people were broken the instant it happened. Is it more probable that somebody running around persecuting, by the way, I'm disappointed in a lot of my military service because I was lied to and manipulated in order to basically support billionaires and oil robbers. But
I'm
I
with
could
you.
see
I
someone
understand what you're saying.
waking up to the fact that the Roman government has been systematically using them to persecute and then eventually kill people. And when they actually have to do it with their own hands, it changes them. And after that, it can be so disturbing that it could prompt hallucinations, especially if they're already prone to them, of I don't know what to do. I'm flailing about. And basically, oh, you have a hallucination that the all-knowing, all-powerful governor of the universe is going to call you out for your past persecution and demand that you shrug it off. It gives you the motivation to do what your conscience already tells you you ought to do. I could see that
I
as a
had never
perfectly plausible scenario.
Right. I'd never considered that Paul actually would feel guilty about what he was doing. I mean, he showed that he did talk about that he thought he was doing the right thing according to Mosaic law. He thought he was doing the right thing, but I never considered that he actually might feel a deep sense of guilt about it that really was consuming. So I never
But we
actually
also
considered that.
we also don't have any way to verify the
No.
either the origins of what Paul said. So there's a concerted effort to paint Jews in a particular light in bits and pieces of the Gospels and the New Testament, and Paul being a part of it as well, because he's kind of abandoning his former position, trying to advance Judaism, I think is how he put it,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
and how he persecuted the real Church of God. So it's been said there's no zealot like a convert, and while that is a truism, it's not necessarily true. But I think Paul is the prime example. Something clicked and converted, and whether it's him coming across, the question is, did he have a real interaction with the real risen Christ? And my concern is that how on earth could anybody, including Paul, ever determine that that was the case? And if it was the case, why is God still playing hide and seek with everybody else?
Okay, here's what I'm told, and it's what I've been told all my entire life as a Christian, is that God picks out certain people in order to advance a plan, right? Moses, Abraham, Jacob, that he doesn't need to appear to everyone because he has an overall plan, and the rest you're going to have to accept on faith. That's what I've been told. And
yeah, I've been told that too. And then I figured out that, first of all, that's a dick move by God, because if he's going to give some people evidence and require other people to take it on faith, is God too silly to understand that faith is the excuse people give when they don't have a good reason, and that faith is not a good foundation for anything? Why do I have to set aside reason and evidence, good sound thinking? Why is it that the decision-making process that I would make to determine if anything else were true needs to be set aside for this one thing, and it doesn't need to be set aside for somebody else who gets evidence?
Right.
I mean, I don't think a good God or a wise God would do either of those things. Ian?
Yeah. No, I was just thinking about like what we were talking about when we were discussing like morality with each other. But if you have a goal and there's something that you need to do to get that goal, then we would say that you ought do that thing, right? Like if your goal is to graduate college, and in order to graduate college you have to go to your classes, then the thing that you should do is go to your classes. If God has a goal, and his goal is to enter into a relationship with all of us, and the only way to do that is by making himself known to all of us, I can't just hear from some people that God exists. I need to know that this God exists. If the only way to make that happen is to come down and reveal himself, well, it seems like the thing that God should be doing is revealing himself. So I don't know. We just have a really good reason to think that God would be revealing himself to everybody who, would require that sort of thing in order to believe in him.
Like a scrolling marquee in the sky in every language known to man. He could do that. True?
Yeah.
And yet that wouldn't be sufficient to convince me that a God exists, but it would be vastly more than we've got.
I think that would probably convince me that a God exists if in the sky it said, made by God with love in every language. I think that would probably convince me, but...
Well, then the highly advanced aliens are going to fool the fuck out of you.
They will. Yeah,
You're right. Anyway, I just want to thank you guys. I will continue to watch atheist content. I have not convinced myself yet that Christ is not real. Well, I know Christ, or at least I think Christ, the historical figure, is real. And I do believe that he is the Savior. But I will continue to watch atheist content because that's the reason I started to challenge myself, right?
I would say call in to probably my two favorites on this particular issue are Justin and Dalton, and talk to them about how Jesus didn't fulfill any messianic prophecies.
I've watched that particular show where he talked about it, and
they do it a lot.
He went through all the messianic prophecies, and I know that people, at least people in the New Testament, are trying to grab verses out of the Old Testament and say, hey, this fulfills that. No, it really doesn't. So I am aware that all the writers of the Old New Testament are people that are writing some decades and centuries later about things they've heard, right? Yep. They've heard this, and I know that it's not flawless. There's a lot of errors and everything else, but I don't know. I have not been able to abandon this faith yet.
I think the way you described it, I appreciate your call, John, and the honesty and the great conversation. I mean, yeah, somebody in chat just said you're MVP today. You might be MVP for the month, but by all means, you may want to subscribe to my YouTube channel. There's a couple of videos coming out that touch on this, but if not, that's fine. But one thing about the way you phrase stuff that just food for thought, you seem to be establishing a shifting of the burden of proof where somebody needs to disprove things about Jesus before you can stop believing. And that is different, because the question you should be asking is, do I have sufficient evidence now to even continue believing? That doesn't shift the burden of proof. And if you don't,
no, I understand.
By all means, keep looking, but you're not a believer, not with a warranted belief at that point.
I know that as a Christian, the burden of proof is on me. I absolutely understand that. The burden of proof is not on atheists at all. And that is why I went to Paul. I said, okay, well, maybe here's something that would make sense to me. Yeah. So anyway, I just want to thank you guys for letting me
Thank you. Keep asking, keep thinking.
You have a great day.
Appreciate it, John.
Yeah, you have a great day too.
I will.
Gosh.
Cheers.
All right.
I feel like this is the best person I've talked to in the entire history of me talking to people on the show. I know I started pretty recently, but yeah, I don't know. I can always appreciate when the caller is like good and genuine and, not like some complete idiot like some of the people I've talked to.
It's funny because there's more people having these conversations than ever. And generally, I think that's a good thing. But the signal to noise ratio has been dipping on a trend where, because we've popularized it, and by we, I'm talking about all of us, on all sides of it, because we popularized it, people pay attention. And if people pay attention, that draws in the trolls and the dishonest callers, and it's genuinely so refreshing to have someone who pauses, thinks, asks questions, answers questions. And when you ask a question, doesn't say, oh yeah, well, what do you mean by morality? You can't even tell me what you mean by this. Therefore, it's like,
yeah.
Let's imagine, this is kind of why I started this. This is one of the many reasons I started this current project of I know language and I know logic, which I guess I threw out the window for that one since I talked about what's actually in the Bible. Although I did do it as questions, like, does this appear anywhere other than Acts? Because I have a big problem with Acts, as some of you will see coming up. But to get the sort of conversation where it's not, it doesn't have to be adversarial if we're all in honest pursuit of the truth. Because if John finds the evidence that warrants believing in Jesus, I'm going to believe in Jesus.
Absolutely. Yeah. We want to believe what's true. It, kind of sounds like John wanted to believe what's true too. I can appreciate that.
I'm hearing weird background noise.
From mine?
I'm not sure. I think I might know what it is, but let's get onto this. We got some other callers here. Robert is calling from Hungary. Robert's a theist. Pronouns are he, him. As an atheist, what's an alternative for morality for Christianity? Hey, Robert, how are you? You're on with Matt and Ian.
Hey, Matt. How are you?
I'm all right.
Fuck myself.
Ian's probably better.
Yeah, he seems to have a good day.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, what's up? What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so my vote is what is the alternative for a moral moral ideology for society if you're an atheist to Christianity? Because I've been thinking about the failures of liberalism and especially ultra liberalism, or what some call neoliberalism, how they abandoned moral teachings. There's the
What are you
famous
talking
line
about?
by Margaret Thatcher that there is no such thing as society, there are only individuals. When asked, have your policies benefited society? So I'm just wondering if what's your answer to that?
Yeah.
If you found any?
Well, I mean, it's interesting that you single that out, but I think that most of the things that we appreciate about our societies draw their roots back directly to liberalism and the Enlightenment. That a lot of the things that I value, freedom, autonomy, these are not religious values. The value of something like freedom of religion is not a value that you're going to find within any religion. You know, values like saying that it's okay to get divorced or whatever, you're probably not going to find this in very many religions, or that, people should be basically equal in terms of their like rights, as assuming that they're like autonomous and capable. These aren't religious values, these are secular values. So I think that a lot of the things that I appreciate about society, well, I don't know, I think that these things draw their roots back to secular ethicists, people like Immanuel Kant.
Yeah. But my problem is that when the tradition of liberalism was taken to its modern permutation by people like Mills, who founded this idea of ultra-liberalism, where the only good, the true freedom was only the freedom of the market. So basically, it is kind of like an extreme form of anarchism, like all freedom is good, and it kind of abandoned the classical liberalism of the Enlightenment. It abandoned brotherhood, fraternity, it abandoned equality, and
Yeah,
just
I mean, I think
pursued
that that's obviously wrong,
unadulterated
right?
freedom.
So, I mean, maybe
But
you could just stick
what
with
is
like
the
liberalism.
counteracting force with liberalism to unending freedom of the person, the ego?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to say. One, I think that more or less your obligations to other people can be summarized as everybody has a right to freedom and well-being. And then I think that there are certain obligations to yourself that, you probably have some obligation to yourself to live a good life wherein you develop your capacities to be like a person. You're developing things like your well-being over time. Um, so I think that that actually precludes things like anarcho-capitalism because, you're going to have to value things like people's well-being, not just your well-being, but everybody's well-being. You're going to need to be putting some stock in that. It's not just that you can like infinitely fuck people over based on your ability to do so. You have obligations to yourself and you have obligations to other people. I mean, I personally find myself aligning basically with like social democracy, something like that. That seems like an alternative that, yeah, go for it, Matt.
I have just a quick question. I got distracted because I was responding to Arden on something. Just either of you can tell me if this is correct. Robert is a theist who didn't call in to defend theism, but called in to ask what counters there are to extreme liberalism.
Yes, because I believe the original counter in traditional liberalism was the idea of brotherhood, the universal brotherhood, that
What?
I think the early liberals relied on Christian ideas of
I don't think
keeper, am I the keeper of my
what
brother, and
ideal are
such
you
ideas.
calling Christian? Because just because there's something that is contained within Christianity, like forgiveness, that's not exclusive to or original to Christianity, and neither is brotherhood, neither is community. Not all of these things are just human principles that get rolled into different versions of different religions. Not all Christians are going to feel the same way about brotherhood.
Mhm. No, of course not. But
So why
I
call
think as a
those things
Catholic,
why call those things Christian? So, for example, there's a pastor um, that my buddy Hemet Mena likes to um, point people to because he says just absolutely awful things. His name's Dale Partridge, and he's a lunatic, but he's a Christian. And yesterday, no, 2 days ago, he tweeted, "Almost everything you've been told is a lie. The truth. Women voting has oppressed women. Homosexuals can't marry. Nations are genetic families. The Jews are not God's people. Singleness is not a gift from God. Children are cheap. Single fathers do better than single mothers." Now, this guy is a nut job who is actively lying and spreading just the worst ideas. Um, and yet he um, calls himself a Christian and points to the Bible and can back up his views with biblical verses. So if one person can support misogyny and slavery by pointing to the Bible and what they view as those Christian values, and somebody else can point to the opposite by picking different verses, why do we get to call anything Christian other than following Christ?
yeah, that's when I become an institutionalist. That I believe that the institutions are the ones that carry the collective wisdom of human evolution and progress. So, as a Catholic, I think that the Church has tried to improve its teachings over time and guards against extremism and radicalism, like this
Why would it need
jackass
to?
pronounces. Sorry?
Wait,
What?
did you say like pronouns?
No, I said pronounces the demagoguery and yeah.
Okay. Well, the
Yeah.
Catholic Church is a criminal organization that has covered up sex
Well,
predators and been involved in all of that. Um,
is
so
is
I'm
that
not
still the case,
impressed.
Matt?
Hang on.
Is that still the case?
Hang on. I'm not impressed with the
That's
Catholic
enough
Church
question.
as the, I'm sorry, I'm still talking. I'm not impressed with the Catholic Church as any sort of litmus test for improvement. I will say the current Pope is probably the greatest Pope in the history of the world, and he and I agree on a great many things, but he's still running a criminal organization, and nothing about what he's advocating for that I would agree with is necessarily Christian. It's, as a matter of fact, the Pope's come under fire for sounding not Christian enough.
Yeah. But the last Pope was pretty good too, in my opinion. And regarding your claim that it is a criminal organization, I mean, there are certainly crimes committed in the past, but why do you think that is still true?
Are you aware of the
Because,
I think
fact
it has
that,
made plenty.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Ian.
yeah, I was just gonna ask, are you aware of the fact that basically every Catholic church has something called sexual misconduct and molestation liability insurance? They're literally insuring themselves in case their priests molested kids. Why would they need that?
Well,
Could
I
you
guess,
imagine if the fucking line had a thing like that?
And by the way, there are still priests alive right now that have been shielded from prosecution by the Catholic Church. Are they getting ready to turn them all in? No.
What do you
That's
mean
why
shielded?
I think
What do you
shielded,
mean?
as in
I'm not telling you.
priests.
Tell me more.
I'm answering your question. These priests molested people, including kids, and the Catholic Church hid it, covered it up, moved them from one parish to another, and helped them avoid prosecution by the authorities. And those people have not been turned over. Is the Pope going to be turning them over today? Because until he does, he's still running a criminal organization that is actively preventing prosecution of pederasts. And by the way, the Catholic Church isn't the only one. This takes place in Protestant churches as well, but the Catholic Church is absolutely currently a criminal organization.
And I know that happened before, but
it's still
what's
happening.
Your source of knowledge that it's still going on?
Robert.
Yep.
Can you list the ones they've turned in? No, you can't. Because they haven't.
They are hiding.
Are there still Catholic priests right now who raped people, who were shielded from prosecution, who have not been turned over to authorities?
There was a famous case in Australia of Cardinal Pell. He fled the country, I think. Didn't he flee it for like the Vatican?
There are multiple documentaries. This is absolutely embarrassing, Robert, that you're going to pretend that the answer isn't obviously yes. Yes, in fact, there are still
this happened.
Catholic
I saw
priests.
Those documentaries, but I just don't know that it's still going on.
Robert, are there living Catholic priests right now who the Catholic Church knows sexually assaulted people who have not been turned over to criminal authorities for justice? Yes or no?
The honest answer, I don't know if they're still existing.
Then you don't know what you're talking about, and you haven't bothered to look into this.
Do you?
And by the way, if you identify as a Catholic and you haven't looked into this, you are now complicit in the cover-up.
I have looked into it, and what I found
you haven't.
My local church and in my country has made plenty of reforms, and things that you mentioned, insurance, I guess part of the reason those exist is that any such thing would happen, the victims would be compensated.
I'm sorry. I don't tend to use AI, but I mean, when I do a Google search, it's the first thing that pops up. And so I said, are there Catholic priests who are still not prosecuted? I didn't even list what for. And AI said, yes, there are thousands of Catholic priests and clergy members identified in abuse cases who have never been criminally prosecuted. Many of these individuals remain free or live without oversight due to legal loopholes, statutes of limitation, and historical church practices that shield abusers. Key reasons why so many accused priests have avoided prosecution: statute of limitations, lack of direct evidence, parish shuffling, that's where the Catholic Church comes in, lack of universal accredited accused lists. Then it links to a number of different organizations that chronicle and track these things. You haven't looked into it if you are this clueless.
But you're making a different statement than your claim. That
no, I'm not making a different statement. I'm saying that I asked you if there were still Catholic priests who have not gone to face penalties, turned over to the legal system.
That's not what you asked. That's not what you stated before. You stated before.
It is exactly what I stated before.
Is the church still protecting these people?
Yes.
Not if they were all prosecuted.
No. Okay, listen to me very carefully before I have to call you a name and break my zen. Is it true that there are priests who have not faced prosecution because the Catholic Church has not turned them over, yes or no?
There might be other reasons. I don't know.
Fuck you. Fuck you. I didn't ask. Listen to you.
Man, you
Listen to
just
you.
read.
All right, no. I'm going to mute you and I'm going to lecture you like the little bitch that you are right now. So sit down. This is as close to me in Zen mode, losing my shit as possible when people embarrassingly throw out their morals in order to protect their fucking church that they know to be and have been exposed to be a criminal organization. So you sit there and you pay fucking attention, because I'm doing this calmly. We know from a number of different investigations, not from necessarily church releasing information, but from a number of investigations, that there are in fact priests who the Catholic Church could turn over to the authorities and do have information on their crimes, and yet they are free. And when I ask you this, instead of saying, yes, those people exist, your dishonest, shady as fuck, embarrassingly inhuman response was to say, well, there could be other reasons too. Well, thank you for that admission. Thank you for acknowledging that there could be other reasons too. But that means that you agree that the Catholic Church could, in fact, turn over the information so that these individuals face prosecution, and they are not turning this information over. That is present tense. Right fucking now, the Pope could open those files, but he hasn't. That means he is still actively participating in a cover-up of a criminal activity. And the suggested data, by the way, not just the Catholic Church, this goes on all over the place. It's just the Catholic Church's easy pickings. It is an ongoing criminal exercise to knowingly hold on to, withhold information that could result in justice for victims. It is an ongoing criminal act to hire lawyers to try to settle with victims so they keep their fucking mouth shut and do not speak ill of the Holy Roman Catholic Church. How dare you, Robert? How dare you fucking pretend that the objections raised against the criminal organization that you're a part of are somehow dishonest? Well, it could be other reasons too. Yes, it could be. And I'll bet you've spent not one fucking second or one fucking penny in your entire life looking into those other reasons or looking into how to actually go about finding justice for the victims. What the Catholic Church is doing to the victims of its sex abuse scandals is exactly what Trump and the Epstein class are doing to make sure that the victims of Epstein don't see justice, and the perpetrators. And you know what? It's all sex. It's all the base, garbage, vile, child abuse, sexual abuse. I'm not going to hang up on you. I'm going to let you come back and apologize and see if there's any way to save this conversation. And Ian might also have other things to say. But I promise you, despite my year of Zen, I am forever on the edge of absolutely ripping a hole in the universe at individuals who have allowed their defense of the institution to assault, metaphorically, the victims all over again. You can come back and apologize now for your dishonest arguing in defense of that criminal organization.
I was not being dishonest. You just read by the AI.
Now you're a liar. Um, I'm going to bow out for me, Ian. I'm going to bring him back. You can talk to him about this. You can talk to him about whatever you want. But for the sake of my Zen mode, this absolute fucking liar doesn't get to come back and pretend like he wasn't being dishonest. But okay. Robert, you're on with Ian, and don't ever talk to me again.
Ian, did you hear Matt say, read up by the AI, that prosecutions were not possible in some cases?
Oops, sorry, I was muted. That's totally
of,
my bad. Wait, what'd you say?
Yeah, did you hear the part where Matt read AI's answer that prosecutions were not possible in some cases because the deadline of prosecution? And when he cut into my answer before, I was trying to say that many cases, probably the church is not protecting them, but prosecution is no longer possible because of that.
But why not? So let's take a specific example. Wait, let's take a, I don't know, I think his name is Cardinal Ricard in France.
Yep.
This person admitted to sexually abusing people, but because the statute of limitations had been lifted or had passed, nothing happened to him, and he was never removed from being a cardinal.
Yeah.
He admitted in 2022 to abusing a 14-year-old girl, and he still has his title of cardinal.
Yeah, that's unconscionable. He should have been removed from as a cardinal if what you're saying is true. But I'm just saying that he might be being protected by the church, but the reason he is not prosecuted is because the statutes ran out, not because the church is shielding him. I'm just trying to be logically consistent.
What would you do if you found out that your friend abused like a 14-year-old girl? You think you'd still invite them to the function? You think you'd still like label them as your friend? Because I know what I'd do.
No, as I said, no, he should be excommunicated.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah. Why doesn't the Catholic Church do that? There's like tons of cases like this.
I don't know any of these cases. What I have learned is that abuse happened in the past. There were some reforms, and today there are lots of mechanisms that reporting and cover-ups can happen like it did before. That's my opinion.
But they're still happening. It's still ongoing.
Evolve, improve, and stop. Sorry?
It's still ongoing is the problem. It's still happening. And even with the ones that they know of, they're not doing anything.
Well, do you mean the abuse is still going on or the protection of abusers?
Well, for sure. The abuse is for sure still going on. I mean, you're literally shuffling around abusers. Like, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to stop? Like, that would just be a statistical wonder. If these abusers that got shuffled from one diocese to the next, like, stopped abusing, that would be incredible. But for sure, the cover-up is still going on. We can know that with certainty.
I wonder, Ian.
I'm not so sure then.
Okay, I'm going to mute Robert again real quick. If you possess information that I committed a crime and you continue to refuse to release it, you are complicit in that crime.
Yep.
That is my position. That, even if there wasn't abuse going on, which would be a miracle enough to almost prove that a God exists.
Yeah.
Even if they had finally stopped all the abuse, what makes them a criminal organization is not just all the crime that they've done and supported in the past, but the continued crime that they're doing by not actively working to expose and bring people to justice. They are hiding information and they are hiding rapists. They are hiding abusers. Sorry, I have no interest in speaking with Robert as he continues to dissemble, but I wanted to correct the misinformation because Robert is going to continue to fucking spin as if, oh, well, there's no evidence that they're doing something ongoing. Yes, by not releasing the information that they have, they are in fact engaged in an ongoing criminal exercise. And the fact that they use the seal of confession and the rights of the priesthood, which are absolutely, absolutely fucking bullshit that should not exist. In
Yeah.
order to
Oh,
do that
yeah.
is also an embarrassment of their religion.
Oh yeah, I think this one is like indisputable. This is like one of the least defensible parts of Catholic doctrine. The idea that if you know somebody is like sexually abusing children, that they have like kids in their basement or something, and they confess this to you under the seal of confession, that you'll get excommunicated if you go to the police with that information, that's unconscionable. That's so crazy. Right, Robert? Wouldn't you agree with that?
Well, I don't think they would be excommunicated. If there's an ongoing crime, a priest is obligated to stop it. If there's an admission of a past crime, the priest is not allowed to give annulment of the crime unless the abuser admits in public to the authorities what he's done.
I think you might just be confused on your own religion then. No, if you confess something to the priest in confessional, they cannot do anything with that. They can give you advice during confessional. They can say, you should really stop doing that. You know, God would not like that. You won't enter into the kingdom of heaven. They can do stuff like that. They cannot tell people about this. They can't do it. Otherwise, they'll get excommunicated.
I mean, the extreme of math theoretical of holding kidnapped children in your basement.
I'm sorry, I muted Robert. Robert, don't even say my fucking name. I don't think you have the slightest clue how close you've come to absolutely busting my Zen. Don't say my name. If you need to reference the Gospel of Matthew, just say the first gospel. I don't do well with liars, and I don't do well with child abusers, and I don't do well with people who are making excuses for abusing children. And the fact that you're sitting here now trying to go down the, oh, well, Catholic doctrine has this and they do this, as if the Catholic Church should in any way be considered imposing some kind of law or justice. Oh, it's okay. They confessed it, and then they got him to admit it. Oh, it's okay. You know, they changed. Oh, it's okay. Don't say my fucking name. He's unmuted.
So the unknown person who keeps talking proposes that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not an unknown person. I'm not an unknown person. Are you able to continue carrying on a conversation without referencing and referring to me in any sense? I would highly recommend you do that. I'm bending over backwards to give you the opportunity to continue burying yourself in a conversation with Ian. Sorry if it wasn't clear when I said, don't say my name. Don't fucking reference me. I'm like John Cena. You don't see me. Knock it the fuck off.
Yeah,
The back.
listen. So, okay, this is like an easy fact. You can easily just Google this. Google, can the priest ever in any circumstance break the seal of confession? What will come up is no, a priest can never break the seal of confession under any circumstances. The rule is absolute and inviolable, meaning a priest is bound to maintain this secrecy even under the threat of torture, imprisonment, or death. Breaking it results in automatic excommunication. You can just Google that. So, do you think that it is morally good if somebody confesses to a priest that they have children in their basement? Do you think that it would be bad for that priest to then go tell the police that this person has children in their basement?
No, no, I don't think so. But
Does the Catholic Church think so?
generally, that is not the teaching about confession. Like, it's mostly talking about past crimes. I mean, is it
You can
even
just Google
realistic to
this.
talk about that an ongoing criminal confesses to an ongoing crime? I mean, if that's the case, the priest don't even need to break the confession. He just goes to the guy's basement and frees the children. I mean,
That
can't
gets
we
you
say
automatically
in more realistic
excommunicated.
sense?
Just Google it.
Yeah, if you break the seal, meaning if you tell other ones, if you just go down to the guy's basement and free the children, is that breaking the seal of confession? I don't think so.
I think that it restricts. So, okay, let's say that it doesn't do that, but let's say you have no idea where the person lives. Would it then be wrong to go to the police?
No, I don't think so. And I guess
Then why are you
the
getting
priest would be
excommunicated for it? If it's not
excommunicated. Like,
wrong, then why would
that's
they
what he should do.
excommunicate you? Like literally just Google, is there any circumstance where you can break the seal of confession? No, there isn't. It's
But
just straight up, it's
there,
inarguable, it's absolute even.
but like these rules are made to govern actual probable things. Like this theoretical is not something that has ever happened or that any priest was ever excommunicated for
You don't think any priest has
breaking the
ever heard
confession.
that? You don't think any priest has ever had it
Or
confessed to them like rape or like child rape or like ongoing child rape? You don't think that's ever
no,
happened? In the history of the Catholic Church, it's
well,
never happened?
ongoing in that the perpetrator might do it again, but in the sense that they're kidnapped children in their basement,
You don't
and
think it's ever happened?
the police can bust in and free them right now. I mean, there's a difference, right? Because one thing can be stopped in the crime in process. The other one would have to be prosecuted, developed, and
Has it ever
the only
happened? Is the
evidence would be
question.
what has.
Has it ever happened that somebody's been
That's it.
confessed to, that like a priest has been confessed to under the seal of confession? You don't think that's ever happened? That somebody's confessed to like, I don't know, having kidnapped people in their basement or like kidnapped children in their basement? You think it never happened in all of Catholic Church history? It's never happened.
That they are holding children right now in their basement. I'm telling you this, Father. No, I don't think those words ever left someone's mouth. I mean,
Okay. I
that's
take that
kind of
as like an
wild.
absurdity
I
if you
mean,
think that nobody has ever confessed that to a priest.
it's kind of pointless, like, because the more realistic dilemma of someone confesses a past crime that they might probably commit again, that's more interesting.
But so
Right?
here's a question. How would we know if anybody had ever confessed that? How would we know? The priest can't break the seal of confession.
But the priest is supposed to pursue the sinner to not sin again. I mean, if
Yeah, they
someone
can
does this, the
encourage
priest
you.
doesn't just. Sorry?
They can counsel you, right? They can say, "Oh, shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that." They can't go to the police and tell you or tell them what you told the priest.
Yeah, but what they can do is counsel the guy and tell them that, if you ever if you keep, I don't know, being a high school teacher, you're going to sin again, and then your confession is null and void, and you are granted no reprieve because you have broken your promise to not sin again.
Okay, do you think that they should be able to do more than that, though? Like, to me, in my mind, you should be able to go to the police with this information. If somebody confesses to doing and continuing to do like a serious crime, you should for sure be able to go to the police. But the Catholic Church doesn't think so.
Well, the logical argument there is that if you have enough evidence to put this person away, then I would say yes, you should. But if he only confesses like,
then why would they get excommunicated for doing that?
Sorry?
Why would they get excommunicated for doing that then?
Well, I don't know. Maybe they wouldn't. I don't know many cases that they were.
Okay, well then this is just you not being familiar enough with your own religion. You can just Google this. You know, what happens if you break the seal of confession? Are there any exceptions? There are no exceptions to it.
Maybe they would make an exception. I mean, if the priest goes to the police and manages to have the guy arrested and
listen, Robert, this is just you. You can say this. This is just you not knowing your own doctrine. Anyone can Google, can you ever break the seal of confession under any circumstances? No, it's instant excommunication. Instant excommunication. I don't know. If you don't know your own doctrine, that's fine. Sure. But I mean, like, come on, you know,
I'm not saying I don't. That wouldn't be the case. That maybe then the priest should do it. It's up to his decision and what he feels is right with God. And if he has enough evidence because the guy confessed enough, then he should be excommunicated, and then God will decide if what he did was righteous or not.
You don't think that people who get executed? This is just another example of you not knowing your own doctrine. You know, people who get excommunicated don't go to heaven. That's also a piece of doctrine, by the way. I don't know if you knew that.
The Catholic Church does not know who goes to heaven. He has general rules who are more likely, but absolutely they do not have knowledge of what God will decide when somebody goes to heaven. And
this is again individual priest. Okay, is there something that you want to talk about that's like unrelated to Catholicism? Because it's very clear to me that you just don't even know your own doctrine. It's kind of pointless to even engage because all it is thus far is just like me telling you about your own doctrine. So do you, is there something like non-Catholic related that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I wanted to ask the original question that, you know, atheism is just the denial of the existence of God, right? So what's kind of the moral system that hold back the excesses of ultra-liberalism and unregulated
How about
freedom?
one that says that slavery is bad? How about that? You know, how about that's like a pretty unique feature about atheism that isn't present in Christian ethics. You know, there's never a condemnation by God of slavery.
Yeah, and that's not what I'm kind of looking for. I'm looking for an ideology that says what is virtuous, what you should do, how you should live your life, a moral framework. Like
about virtue ethics.
I hear maybe some people crack themselves humanists, but
about virtue ethics.
What?
If what you want is virtuous, try virtue ethics.
Yeah, what's that?
It's where you hold what you ought be as virtuous, that there's like some set of virtues, you know, like justice, wisdom, temperance, courage, and that you just ought be that.
And what's that? What does that entail? What is that? Does it have
you act
rules?
virtuously.
Does it have? And what determines what is virtuous?
It's circumstantial. Virtue just refers to the disposition to do the right thing in the right circumstance. So, for example, justice just refers to treating like cases alike. So you pick out certain morally relevant features in virtue of acting at all. You're going to need your freedom and well-being. But in order to remain consistent, in order to treat like cases alike, be just, you know, that is You need to just give these rights to everyone.
You give rights to everyone, but what rights should be included? Like, what
The
is there a
rights to freedom and
guideline that
well-being.
helps people decide, or is it just some kind of innate morality that humans have?
Yeah, the right to freedom and well-being is the right that everyone has. You know, the right that got violated by
The
the
right to freedom.
Catholic priests. Yeah.
Yeah, but so who determines what rights people should have, or
Yeah, what's
what
going to be necessary
determines
in order to take any
self-harm?
action at all? It's going to be laws of logic that determine these rights. The fact that I'm an agent and that in order to be an agent and pursue any goal at all, I would need my own right to freedom and well-being. Otherwise, I can't achieve any goal. And if me being an agent means that I have that right, then every agent must have that right, if indeed I'm treating like cases alike.
Okay, but so what? I watched a video recently, and what would like a CEO of a company, a mega corporation, what would encourage him, in your worldview, to give
Encourage
fair
him.
wages to laborers in China?
Are you asking like why ought he?
Yeah, in your moral framework, if he applies to it, what would encourage him to give fair wages to laborers in China or India?
The fact that he's violating their right to well-being, the fact that paying people like pennies a day leads to, you know, a substantially lower well-being than you have. You're claiming a right to have a specific level of well-being by being some CEO, and the way that you're achieving this is by paying people starvation wages that leave them with substantially lower well-being. So you both think that agents have a right to, you know, basically no well-being and also a lot of well-being, which is a contradiction. So you'd be contradicting yourself.
No, I'm just saying that if someone was a CEO, in
Yeah, I
your
just
moral
answered this
framework,
question.
what would
I literally just
what
answered
would
this
they be?
question.
Sorry, when I speak and you start, I can't hear you. So why would they be encouraged to give people fair wages if they would say, well, if I don't hire them at this rate, someone else they would be unemployed, or
Yeah, because everyone
they
has
would
a
be paid
right
by
to
someone else.
well-being. Yeah, okay. So the explanation is this. Everyone has a
Yeah.
right to well-being. If you're claiming a certain level of well-being for yourself in virtue of doing the action, well, that needs to be universalizable with the action. So if your action leaves everybody else with substantially reduced well-being or leaves certain people with substantially reduced well-being, well, that's untenable. You'd be
Well, it's
contradicting
not
yourself.
reduced well-being. Is it reduced well-being when you pay them something? I mean, it's an increase in well-being.
You're claiming a certain level of well-being for yourself. You're saying that you ought to have this like high, rich, ultra wealthy CEO level of well-being. And then meanwhile, you know, the people who you're paying pennies a day have like no well-being. You're saying that they don't have a right to that level of well-being.
So you think it would be unethical in your worldview because you as a CEO claim a high wage and you don't give the same level of wage to everyone?
No, that's not the
Is that
critique.
the
It's just that
rule?
you've
Sorry.
substantially reduced the well-being of other people, that your action requires these people to have basically no well-being. That if the core function of the company, if the core function of the economic system is to leave some people with tremendous well-being and some people with none, that's not sustainable and it's not acceptable either. You know, even though the CEO might have a higher wage and the CEO might have, you know, substantial well-being, the well-being of the employees shouldn't be too far off. And that doesn't mean that they need to get paid the same wage. It just means that they can't get paid catastrophically different wages. You know, I don't think that my boss's well-being is much better than my well-being.
Okay, but you kind of saying that they reduce the well-being of the workers. If a CEO creates a factory in China and hires people who work there willingly, they get paid. So their well-being, in a sense, increases, because if they wouldn't be a factory, they would be either unemployed or paid even less.
Yeah, that's
So
a problem with the system,
the way
right?
you
That's a
articulate,
problem with the exploitative nature of it all. The system is exploitative towards these groups of people. It basically guarantees that they have this low level of well-being, which is why unregulated capitalism is in violation of my moral system.
yeah, but why is it in violation? Because you're kind of articulating
Because
that
it
it's
violates their right to well-being for like the 8th time. It violates the right of these people getting
not.
paid pennies a day to that specific level of well-being.
Yeah, but you keep saying that the violation is that they reduce their well-being, but it
Sorry,
doesn't
that's not
actually
the
reduce it.
violation isn't that it reduces the well-being. It's that you're guaranteeing that they have this level of well-being. But in order to take the action in the first place, you would need way more well-being than that.
In order to take the well-being, you need way more than that? What do you mean?
You wouldn't be able to be the CEO of a company if the level of well-being that you had was the same level of well-being as the person who's getting paid pennies a day. You wouldn't have the energy for it. You'd be sick.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, but in order to take the actions and be like the CEO of a company, you need a certain level of well-being. But then you're claiming that these workers who you're paying pennies a day aren't entitled to that same level of well-being. So agency is both sufficient to a right to that level of well-being, but also insufficient. So you'd be contradicting yourself, which is why it's in violation of the moral system.
It's insufficient well-being, and you have a duty to provide sufficient well-being.
You need to be able to universalize the level of well-being that's required for the action. If in order to take the action, it would require a certain amount of well-being on your behalf. You need to be able to take the action and not reduce anybody else below that level of well-being. That's the criteria. It's universalizability.
Take the action and... Sorry, what do you mean by take the action? I just don't... maybe it's the English I don't understand.
Your action cannot reduce people below the level of well-being that would be required for you to take the action in the first place. So let's take a murderer. You need to be alive in order to do a murder, but the murder is going to leave somebody not alive. So that's contradictory, because you'd be both claiming the right to murder people while also leaving them. So you'd be claiming the right to life while also denying the right to life. So it's not, you're not able to consistently hold the rights that you would need to claim for the action in the first place.
Okay, now I see. I didn't have the context of you can't take an action that reduces your state, but why you take action. So you're saying that you shouldn't pay someone below living wages that you're only able to pay them because you're above that level. But again, your phrasing, the words you say, is that you're reducing their well-being, when actually I would imagine a lot of
I just clarified to you that that's not what's going on. And you even stated it back to me. So at this point, I think you probably just don't have a critique of the system.
Well, my critique is that capitalists would argue that they are not reducing their well-being. They are increasing it from the level that would exist without them.
I'm not saying that they're decreasing their well-being from where they are if they were like unemployed. My claim is that in order to take actions that are going to leave people in China exploited or people in India exploited, where you're paying these people like literal like pennies a day for the work, that this is going to lead to a severely reduced state of well-being in them, like the workers, a state of well-being that you could not be the CEO of a company with.
So you're saying that it's in your framework, you cannot pay people wages that would lead them to be at a level that you would be unable to exist as a CEO.
Yeah, basically.
Because there has to be some kind of reciprocity, or
Kind of. It depends what you mean by that, but maybe.
Because I just find this idea confusing, because obviously there are huge differences in wages, and paying wages to someone in China that would be below minimum wage in America would be a very good job. They would live comfortably. So it's so relevant.
That's not the contradiction. Probably the way that we want to frame the question about like what's an acceptable wage to pay is like, okay, if you were paid this wage, would you still be able to be CEO? No. If you were paid pennies a day, you'd be starving to death. You wouldn't be able to be a CEO.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of a different standard, because a CEO,
it's the same standard,
has a lot more responsibility.
Could you survive as a CEO and continue to be a CEO if you get paid like pennies a day? If you eat like 600 calories a day,
I would.
Yeah, exactly, right. So there'd be a contradiction. So that's why it would be impermissible for you as a CEO to pay people in like China and India pennies a day, because if you were to do that, if that's the level of well-being that you existed at, then you couldn't take the action in the first place that reduces people to that level of well-being. Or sorry, you don't like the word reduce. We can say like guarantees that they're going to have that level of well-being.
What level?
The starvation level.
The guarantees, but yeah.
Well, I mean, this is a great demonstration. No, I was just going to grandstand, but yeah, if you have like a response to that, go for it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that I work for a big company and I had a decent salary, but I wouldn't do the job of a CEO for that, even though it wasn't starvation level. It was highly above that, but I wouldn't take the same risk and responsibility for that kind of work.
Yeah. So let's say that you get paid like $80,000. A person who gets paid $80,000 can probably have the well-being required to be the CEO. Like they can at least structure their life in a way they have like the energy to be a CEO. So a CEO paying somebody $80,000 wouldn't be inconsistent, because they're setting people at levels of well-being such that if they had that level of well-being, they could still take the action. It's a question of universalizability.
Well, they could take the action of being a CEO, but they wouldn't, like, willingly.
That's the question, is whether or not they can.
Refuse the job, like.
Well, yes, that's totally fine. It's a question of whether or not they have the well-being to do that thing. That's the criteria. It's a question of whether or not you can universalize it, whether or not if you take this action and reduce and make somebody's well-being a certain amount, if you had that well-being, would you still have been able to take the action in the first place? Go back to the murderer example. If you murder somebody, you'd leave them dead. But if you were dead, you couldn't do the murder in the first place. You'd both need to claim the right, the freedom and well-being to do the murder, whereas you'd be denying people that same well-being that would be required to do it in the first place. You're being inconsistent. You're claiming rights based on nothing, that your agency is sufficient for a specific level of freedom and well-being for you, so it must be sufficient for all other agents as well.
Okay, but how is this? Is this different from the biblical "do unto others as you would be done to you"?
Absolutely, because so there's a couple of things. First of all, in terms of do unto others as you would want done unto you, this is like a really crude statement, because if I want somebody to come and kill me, do unto others as you would want done unto you would prescribe that you should go and kill other people. But if you need to claim the right to take the action, and you can only claim that right if your action doesn't deprive anybody else of that same right, well, even if I want someone to come and kill me, I can't go and kill them, because in order to kill them, I would need to be alive, and me killing them would make them not alive, so I'd be inconsistent.
Okay.
And that's why secular ethics are so much better than Christian ethics.
Yeah, and your moral framework is superior because it covers more cases where people are obligated to act morally.
I think so. I think that's one of the features of it, yeah. I also think that it's grounded in something real. And, that's kind of the other important feature of it.
Well, it's grounded in logic, right?
Yeah.
So it's not something real, but something still just ideology.
You don't think logic is real?
An idea, logic.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
That's how we assess which ideas are true and false, right?
Yeah, its logic is self-consistent, right? It's internally consistent.
Yeah.
But is it real? It's an idea. In what sense? Yeah. So one other important question is: do you think that this idea, this moral framework you have, can it be applied and encouraged in a wider societal level?
I don't see why not.
Can it be propagated? Can it be how? How would it be propagated to the masses?
Are you asking, like, could we make sure that everybody follows this? Are you asking more of like an enforcement question?
The
same way that you spread any ideology is the way that you could spread this one. So the question that you're asking now isn't like yeah. The question you're asking now isn't like an ethical question. You're not asking like, what ought we do? At this point, you're asking like a rhetorical question, like, how do we convince people of this?
No.
I don't know, the same way you convince people of anybody or anything.
Not just convince people, individuals, but how do you make sure that enough of society follows these ideas?
Believe me. Yeah, sorry, Matt. You know, if there was another person in the queue, you know I'd be moving on. But
no, there were people in chat who were like, you should move on, you should move on. And the thing is, there aren't other theists in the queue. So I'm going to mute the caller real quick, because we touched on a lot of different things. And when you explain a moral system and you show that it's, you know, at least better, and you're down to just, well, how would you ever convince people of that? Oh, I don't know. Why don't we threaten them with death and promise them eternal life if they don't pay attention to it? After all, that's how your system did it. Hey, I don't need to hear moral thoughts from someone who thinks that priests can only forgive under certain circumstances and offer magical forgiveness and absolvement of sins. And that if the person they've forgiven doesn't fall in line or stay in line, why, we'll take away your magical get out of problems free card, your magic sin forgiveness, none of which has any ties to actual justice, actual morality, or even legal justice. No victim gets any justice under that system. No perpetrator ever sees justice under that system. The entirety is, oh, you're terrible, but I'll forgive you anyway. There's no compensation. There's no penalty. Oh, Jesus paid the penalty. If Robert assaults kids and God forgives it, that doesn't help the kids. It doesn't lead to any sort of justice. It renders the law and justice completely useless, and it opens the door for him to assault your kid because there was no penalty. There was no, oh, but Robert might sincerely change. Correct. It's possible, I suppose, that Robert stops abusing kids. By the way, this is just the hypothetical, and you fucking deserve it. It's possible that Robert eventually stops hurting kids, but it would be more possible if he were locked up. Because that system doesn't help any kid. It doesn't help any person help any kid. It doesn't help any body help anyone else. It doesn't lead to any justice. It renders the law and justice useless. It opens the door for more assault. When you support a system like that, when it defends the people who are committing SA, amongst other things, against kids, I think you're now suspect. Nobody should allow you around their kids. If you're the type of person who supports a system that offers magical forgiveness without a duty to report, you should not be allowed to be around kids ever. I don't need to have a discussion about morality in anything other than a, here's where you're absolutely wrong. Here's where you sacrificed everything about your human dignity on the altar of idealism and institutional, control. Here's where you have sacrificed anything that could possibly be viewed as good. You don't need to, you're not eligible or qualified to have a thoughtful discussion about morals and grounding and enforcement and convincing. You're advocating for a system where you actively lie to yourself with excuses of what may or may not be happening. And you sacrifice the duty to report, which I would argue is the most moral action anyone could take. We can debate what sort of penalties might be imposed. We can debate what kind of limitations, but the duty to report is the bare minimum action. And you're supporting an organization that denies a duty to report and claims that their duty is to not report. Their duty is to keep this stuff a secret. Why? Because protecting the church, protecting the institution, protecting the very thing you came in to defend is more important than protecting children. It's more important than protecting the innocent. It's more important than allowing victims to see justice. It's more important than human dignity. This wasn't just a long conversation with someone confused about morality. It was a great example of exactly how religions poison your brain, how they can get you to sacrifice every aspect of dignity, how you're so confused about the basics of morality.
Yeah.
That you'll be like, well, it might not be the only reason. I guess maybe there might be priests diddling somebody somewhere, but there's good reasons not for them not to report. No, there's not. There is no good moral reason for anyone who receives a confession or finds out either through a confession or reports and investigation. There is no good reason for anybody to hide that information. It is immoral. It is almost certainly criminal in most jurisdictions. And the Catholic Church, along with many others, is an active, persistent criminal organization. And you should be absolutely embarrassed to have spent so much time defending a lack of a duty to report. I hope, Robert, that you learned something from Ian about how to ground, I don't know, any morality. Because no matter where you end up, you have got to get out of and stop supporting the one that's going to make you look like you're a kitty diddler that just hasn't been caught yet. Goodbye, sir.
Yeah. I think that this is well, I don't know, it's like a great reminder and like a series of reminders about why there is never, ever, ever a reason to cede to the theists, that they're the ones with the objective morality and that you're not. Their morality is laughably dumb, laughably dumb. It's absurd on face, and they just have to bite the bullet. When you lay out your moral system to them, they can have no critiques of it. It's a good, robust moral system. Their moral system thinks that you shouldn't report pedophiles. They think that you should defend it, that, the Catholic Church is infallible. It's what, so what if they shuffled around? Like they will bite the craziest bullets. I don't know. There's never, ever, ever a reason to cede ethics to the theists. And I hope no atheist thinks that you have to do that to be an atheist or that you should do that to be an atheist. Their morality is laughable and you should laugh at it.
There's one caller left that I wasn't going to take, and we only have like a couple of minutes left, but Ben's calling in with some evidence of Catholic abuse in Boston. Ben, I appreciate you calling in. I don't know how much good it'll do, but I'll give you a minute or so to hit that.
Well, that's fine. It'll only take that. In the year 2000, a investigative team from Boston Globe called Spotlight got confirmation on 70 priests.
That's the documentary we were talking about.
I'm sorry?
That's the documentary we were talking about earlier.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was listening, during the show, but
yeah, it's a whole movie about called Spotlight.
Yeah, that is correct. I actually get the Boston Globe, so I was reading that while it was going on in the year 2000.
The caller would have looked at that and said, "Oh yeah, he knows they did stuff in the past. He wants to know what's ongoing." And I'm like, the cover of that is still ongoing.
Oh, I see. Oh man, that's stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing was.
He didn't object to the fact that they used to be. I mean, that should have been the point that I tried to drive home. Oh, so you're fine with the notion the Catholic Church used to be a criminal organization, but they're not. They got better. How bizarre that he's defending them when they, to whatever extent they did or didn't get better. But it's like, oh yeah, this organization that is the holy representative of Almighty God was a criminal organization right up until, Spotlight exposed stuff. And then they got better.
And the wild thing was Cardinal Law at the time knew all about it, and he got promoted after it came out.
Yeah, it just seems like one of the things you would do if you were like an all good God. You'd say, yeah, my church, thou shalt not rape kids. And if you find out that somebody did rape kids, thou shalt turn them in. Like, that just seems like foundational. I don't know.
Thou shalt not wear mixed fabrics or eat shellfish. But if you happen to diddle kids, why, we should hide you.
Yeah. She had to do the old shuffle. Got to do the old priest shuffle.
I appreciate you calling. We got to head out. We've run out of time, but thanks so much. And it's a great documentary. I recommend people go take a look at it. Spotlight. It's a docudrama, I think, is probably the right category for Spotlight, but it's a film about that. Hey, thanks everybody for tuning in, and thanks to Ian for hanging out with me today. Thanks to the wonderful and talented Arden Hart, who's over there producing this show after, laying on her ass and doing nothing for a month. I'm going to get beat later for that, but I love her to pieces, and she's doing great, and her mic's not working, so she can't say anything really without it causing a problem. And I took advantage of that. But oh my gosh, am I glad to have her back. We're glad to have all of you back. Stay tuned. Is it Calling It Now or Cuz I Wanna that's coming up next? I don't know. Go watch it.